Okay. I think we're live. Are we live? Yeah, we're live. Good evening, everyone. How are we all doing today?
Oh God, I'm good. I enjoy your introductions to these streams.
What introductions?
Well, there you go. Yeah, I think you're more nervous than Chloe is.
Oh, mate, do you know what? I'm actually really looking forward. I'm not going to lie. I am really looking forward to getting back on Double Feature Horror Show. I'm happy to be a guest rather than a host. I think as we get into it, I think I'll settle in. But yeah. How are we doing, everyone? Are we all right in the chat? I see some people here already. We've got Charity Rivers. We've got Admiral Belzadil. How you doing? Rory Herbert. Interesting. He shared a little fact on Twitter earlier. It turns out he's actually related to one of the magistrates during the witch trial. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah. That's really cool.
How awesome is that?
To be fair to Rory Herbert, he's related to absolutely everybody somehow.
Well, we're all 18th cousins or something like that.
I think I've heard that meme from somewhere. We've got Layman, we've got Le Pleron, Zachary Baldock. Hey, how you doing? And Right Honourable Fez, What Ho, and Mike Cole from Alaska. How you doing? You all right? I realised today, right, that in preparation for this stream, obviously Tuesday, 8 p.m, I'm missing the England game. But it doesn't matter because we've already qualified, so we're all good on that front.
I realised that as well, but this is one of those days where I'm technically working.
Right.
I couldn't watch it anyway.
Right.
Yeah, keep it on the hush.
Working hard, or hardly working, I think is what they say, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know, Trisket, I know Aydin gets nervous streamers, so let it be known that we're all here listening to you intently judging every word you say. Thank you, Trisket, that really helps.
Are you? Because I get nervous during streams. Does everyone know that about me? Anyone who knows me knows I get nervous during my own streams. If I get nervous when it's just me,
although I did see you trying to call out Sitch and Adam to try and get in their stream the other day, and I was in the chat and I was like, let her in.
No. Well, hang on. That was unrelated. That's because I don't know if you know, but Adam and I had a little bit of a fight the other day. But it wasn't a fight. We're like besties. It's all fine. But we want to let things cool down. And also, I would have gone off on Hunter Avalon so hard it might have been, a massacre that probably no one wanted to happen. And I didn't want to interrupt their talk because it was very interesting to hear Hunter bury himself. So when what's the saying about that? So like when someone's destroying themselves, you don't interrupt them. So
that's it.
When never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake.
Right, that's it.
Just
is that a Hitler quote though? So I don't
No. It was Napoleon.
Oh, okay. Well, not a whole lot better, but all right.
Oh, there you go. Fun fact. Allegedly, oh god, I think Mitch is going to love this because of heightism, but allegedly, I'm related to Napoleon.
I mean, that's cool.
Oh, God. No, that's disgusting.
I'm not allegedly. Give me a second. I'll think of who it is. Lord Bewdley is my great uncle.
Wow.
I've really got to look into my family tree.
Although
Earl Baldwin of Bewdley. That's my great uncle. So that Stanley Baldwin somehow related.
I do take that claim though with a pinch of salt because it was my mum who told me, and she's a little bit naive. When she was married to my dad, he convinced her that the Germans won the Second World War, and that we were actually speaking German because he could, because she's that easy. Even now, when you turn around, when you ask her who won the Second World War, she'll be like, we did.
Well, the Bewdley thing, that's legitimate. The Lord Baldwin shit, because we got I remember a couple of years ago there was a thing where there were about 15 of us left in that precise bloodline, and when they died, they were trying to figure out who the Earlship was supposed to go to,
right.
and we were somewhere like 10th down on the list, like not really in the running, but somewhere like 10th down where we got notified about it, or my dad did, not me, but far back. And that's my only claim to any kind of anything that matters in terms of what would you call it, monarchic power, I suppose. It's never going to happen.
No, unfortunately,
I mean, unless they all come in, they have tragic car accidents with bullets in both sides of the head. I don't know, it could happen.
And apparently, my ancestor just got banished to Saint Helena, I think it was.
Oh well, that happened to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So, people probably know where I live, which I try to avoid, but people probably do. People have been banished here though too. However, I enjoy living here.
I just realised, you know what? In my anxiousness, I haven't even introduced you guys. So first up, for regular viewers of Proper Horror Show's channel, where we do where we do the double feature horror show, where we talk horror movies. As you guys will know, Proper Horror Show hasn't been streaming last week or this week. She's been taking some time off, so I've been filling up the space. And joining me is Haryan Glaeddyv. Haryan.
Yep. Hello there. What up, my drillers, etc.
Yes, and of course, special guest, Aydin Paladin. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. Thanks for inviting me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. So, for those who do know and who participated and who voted, thank you very much. Last week we did a Florida Man stream, and I thought, that was quite a good one. But I know that some people also wanted to do a sort of breakdown of the Salem Witch Trials. Zachary, drillers, the meme. I'm gonna
don't ask.
Don't ask. It's
okay.
The point of that is, if you ask, that is the meme.
Yeah. If you have to ask, you need it to be there.
It can be whatever you want it to be. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So personally, I was kind of wanting to do the Florida Man stuff again because I thought it was quite fun. But I'm a big lover of democracy.
Well, I always am fond of Florida Man. He is fascinating.
Oh, blimey.
A real life superhero.
Oh, Mima, bless ya. Oh, we'll get well soon and catch up later. Oh, bless her. But yeah, so democracy wins, and here we are. We are talking about the Salem Witch Trials. Now, spooky stuff, yeah. So just before I bring up the, mate, I've done untold amount of slides. I was crunching this late last night trying to get this all ready. But before we sort of get into it, Haryan, how much do you know about the Salem Witch Trials?
I kind of know things here and there from it. I could maybe make a small wiki article about it.
Okay.
Because Town of Salem was quite a popular game a few years ago. I used to play at uni.
Right.
So whenever I'm playing something, I'll kind of look into things behind it. So obviously, Town of Salem. Look at what happened with the witch trials there. And it's like, oh well.
Yeah.
So yeah, things from a few years ago. But I've been building a garden house this week, so I've not had time to do anything. Hence, I've not made a video this week.
Yeah. Apparently, you lost your hammer and using your head instead. So.
Oh.
Yeah. Some piece of wood did indeed fall on my head. That was quite
no. I hope you're okay.
Yeah, I'm fine though.
That's right. There's not much there to damage. It's fine. It's all good.
True. Yeah. I gained brain cells.
You've got that massive helmet on your head anyway to protect you. So
no,
that's all
true,
good.
Yeah.
And of course, Aydin, you love your research. How much do you know about Salem?
Culturally and from a personal interest perspective, I'd say a decent amount in terms of the history. But I think that one of the things I could help provide is the social science explanation for what the hell happened, because what happened is kind of a fascinating microcosm of social psychology, and that makes it interesting to me. It is a vastly, I think, though, misunderstood part of history.
Yeah.
In that it gets used kind of to say, like, anytime there's group conformity, it must be this cult-like belief unilaterally, but that's not what I think actually happened. Things in history are never as simple as they're usually portrayed, right?
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah, I think I'll hold my hands up. Before I even started researching about the Salem Witch Trials, I knew pretty much nothing about it. I mean, I knew it happened. I knew it was 1692. I knew it was a witch trial. It was witch hunts, basically. That was it. I wasn't prepared for the amount of sort of backstory there was. And so I've tried to condense it down into sort of like a few key sort of characters within that. But of course, you know, I like true crime. You can consider this crimes against humanity, if you will. If people wanted me to sort of do a little bit of a story about a specific individual, then I can probably do that at some point. But yeah, there was just so much to cover. And like you say, the psychology behind it and sort of the theories as to sort of the possible reasons as to why it took place. I found that like quite interesting. I mean, a lot of it's hard to pin, like the way I sort of saw it, it was hard to pinpoint it on one specific reason. I felt like it probably had a combination of like 2 or 3 factors.
Almost everything in reality does.
Yeah, exactly.
There's very few things that are isolate to one factor.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly, and that's it. You know, I was looking at it from one side, and they're like, oh, you know, is it? We'll obviously get into this much later, but it was a case of, you know, oh, was it this or was it this? And I'm thinking it could have been that and that. You know,
I think the idea that what gets peddled the most about the Salem Witch Trials is it was just like Christians bad, Christians mean. Christians want to burn people and that kind of stuff, and it's like no, hang on. I mean, yes, maybe on some level,
yeah.
But you got to be aware of the social climate at the time, the era in which this was happening. All kinds of things go into this.
Absolutely, and that's another thing as well that I tried to sort of separate when I was looking into this. Was trying to sort of put myself in the time, that era that they were in. And sort of like the you know, the beliefs and the knowledge and the tech, you know, just putting myself in their shoes in that time frame and trying to sort of empathize with what was going on there, rather than sort of like putting 21st century hat on and thinking, oh my god, this is ridiculous, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's how we should all look at all parts of history, I think, as well. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, you got to try to put yourself, and I understand this is the other part. This will be the more social identity side, I think, that I'll get into probably later as we go through this. But you have to understand, humans don't change. Okay, they're not going to change over 100 or 200 years. They've barely changed in 40,000. So when you start to like look at stuff that happened in Salem, I think that when we understand it, not so much as it's been mythologized and turned into warning sort of scenarios, but actually understand how the things that happened in the Salem Witch Trials can happen anytime. They really can. And you know, how they relate to human psychology. That's where I think it's really, really fascinating. And then the importance of understanding history, and particularly this part of history, which is both spooky and neat.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like what you said about humans not changing. You know, there's a few modern day sort of examples. I'm trying to struggle to think of some now, but there are some.
What was the case with the teachers who were all accused of basically being witches and like molesting students? I think maybe back in the 1990s, that was a big one, where they said they had. I'm trying to think of what it was called. It was like a school where they thought they were demon worshippers. And they raped children, essentially.
This is in the 90s.
Yeah. In America. Yeah, I can't remember what it was called now. It's unfortunate, but there was this big thing that happened. There's an X-Files episode about it and everything, but there was this big sting where in the 90s they thought there was like there were teachers who were molesting children, not just molesting children, because we know that does happen, by the way, but obviously. But were engaging in like devil worship. It was in the Midwest, and I'm trying to think. It might have been earlier than the 90s. Might have been the 80s or the 70s. Oh shoot, what was this called? I'll think about it. Give me a minute, and I'll think on it.
Cool. All right, okay.
But this does still happen. Is my point. It's happened quite recently in the big scheme of things.
Oh, there you go. There's some of the Franklin scandal. Does that ring any bells?
That might be it. I don't think that's the one I'm thinking of, though. Give me 1 second.
I mean, can we call cancel culture a type of witch hunting?
I suppose you could.
It was the McMartin preschool trial. Yeah, this was
right.
Which was it was a daycare sexual abuse case in the 1980s, and one part of the okay, so part of it was they believed that as this case was being examined, and there could have been sexual abuse going on, a lot of it's all got muddled, and the reason it got muddled is because there were accusations of satanic worship happening at the same time. So it was, I'm not saying that the people involved with the McMartin preschool incident were innocent, because I don't think they necessarily were, but they definitely were subject to the same satanic panic that we saw during the Salem Witch Trials. And look into the McMartin preschool trial. It's really fascinating. I haven't looked into it in a couple of years, so my knowledge on the precise events is a bit muddy, but interesting stuff.
Yeah, I might have to have a look at that.
Another one for the
not clapping for the NHS
crime.
Was a witch hunt. Yeah, true crime, exactly. It all fits. I can fit it all in. I can weave it into what I do here. Absolutely. Have you guys got your little presentations up? I've got it up on the
yeah.
All right, cool, because the guys in the chat, the audience watching, should be able to see it now. With Salem Witch Trials. So if we're ready, did you want to crack on with this, or is there anything else you want to say before we crack on?
No, I think in terms of Monty Python and the Holy Grail, get on with it.
Lovely stuff. All right, so there's going to be so in terms of the contents today, there's quite a bit to go through. I thought we'd do like a bit of a background of Salem, discuss a bit of Puritanism. So I know Harry, and you're a man of the cloth.
Yeah, I'm
ish.
Very much the opposite.
But very much the opposite. So I was hoping you could kind of like put your perspective in and sort of like your knowledge of the enemy. Talk about a couple of family rivalries, main rivalries that were going on in Salem at the time, and some of the divisions between the towns and the village. Wanted to talk about the minister at the time, Samuel Parris, and sort of like when the afflictions began, the accusations, the witch pursuit thingy that took place, Oyer and Terminer. So for Rory Herbert, I'm sure he would know all about that, considering that, you know, his great uncle, maybe granddaddy, was part of the magistrates of Oyer and Terminer. Now, a couple of characters I wanted to sort of focus on as well were Giles and Martha Corey. Some of the theatrics and sort of like the accusations going around. Go over sort of like a brief explanation of the body count, and then really sort of talk about what the hell happened. So in terms of the background, so for those who don't know, Salem is a coastal city in Essex County, Massachusetts, and it was considered one of the most it's considered one of the most haunted places in America today. Unsurprisingly. Now, before Salem, after the witch trials took place, there was a lot of shame, and they sort of like kept hush about what sort of went on for many years after the witch trials. But in more recent times, they fully embrace the history, and it's actually quite a big tourist destination as a result. Early settlements began sort of around in 1620, 1626, and I believe it was incorporated in 1629. And excuse me, Salem comes from the Hebrew word shalom, meaning peace. And Salem would become one of the most significant seaports in America. Now, the population of Salem at the time was heavily Puritan, and it's no coincidence that a lot of settlers came to America to escape persecution from the English, especially after, sort of during the Civil War at the time, sort of between 1642 and 1649, 51. Settlements would form around the waterfront, and that would become known as Salem Town. But as time would grow, some of those communities would then branch out around the outskirts, and that would become Salem Village. So yeah, these communities essentially, as time went on, they became a lot distinct from each other. So the town was made up mostly of wealthy merchants making money from imports and exports, and were also successful innkeepers. Whereas the villages, on the other hand, were made up. Essentially, it was made up of land being distributed to families from Salem Town who were basically looking to move to farming and agriculture. Next slide, and this is probably where I would like Haryan. And actually, Aydin, if you have any sort of religious sort of studies or sort of things like that to pop up. If I'm rambling on, guys, just jump in, interrupt me, and take over at any point. It's absolutely fine. So in terms of Puritanism, does that hopefully that looks about right for yourself, Haryan? But Puritanism began as a Reformation movement in England in the late 1500s, and essentially its aim was to remove links to Catholicism from within the Church of England.
Yes,
and they sought to change the structure and ceremonies of the church.
Yes, they wanted to make it all very boring. They basically they saw the Catholic Church this big institution of greed because every church you'd go into.
Well, it was a huge institution of greed at the time, by the way. The Catholic Church was like the wealthiest, most powerful institution basically in the medieval world. They had a huge amount of money, and also there were things that I can understand why the Puritans had issues with the Catholic Church, and namely in their veneration of Mary. And that is something that to this day bothers a lot of Christians, and the veneration of saints, which they find to be more polytheistic, and they don't like that aspect of Catholicism. But particularly, not only was the Catholic Church taking in a lot of money, they were extremely powerful, not just both versions in terms of the Catholic Church itself in Rome, and then also the Eastern Orthodox Church, also, in the East, obviously, were both very powerful entities that basically controlled much of Europe during the Middle Ages. So I understand why people were disconcerted with it.
Yeah, well, I guess that's what you get from a world where kind of religion was... It was very central to a lot of people's lives, and I mean, well, even the Knights Templar, they became bankers in the end after they were done fighting crusades. So of course they made money. And then
it was a time. Well, they certainly did kind of pillage the Holy Land a couple times and brought back what they could carry.
Yeah, but that was justified.
Well, yeah, of course it was justified. Deus Vult,
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, so obviously there was a lot of obviously I think it's safe to say that there was a bit of a rivalry between Puritans and Catholics in terms of how they should practice their worship to God. They basically believed that the church basically would have no rituals or ceremonies that weren't found within the Bible. So if it isn't literally in the scripture, then it's it's not allowed. So things like, I think it was like birthdays or music, toys, things like that.
Well, I think even the sacrament, even taking communion, that was because that's not specifically in it. That's a representation of the Last Supper, but it's not really in the Bible. So I think they had disagreements on all kinds of levels with what the Catholic Church had done to deify and ritualize all of these things.
Yeah, I mean,
that's another reason that Christmas is banned as well. That's not technically in the Bible. Well, it's obviously the birth of Jesus is, but not as a celebration. So. Yeah,
actually, I think that comes up in one of the slides. In one of the,
I think they're okay with Easter, though. I think Easter is the one okay one to celebrate.
Yeah, without some fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for a couple of days you can celebrate that. But yeah, so like even things like priests not wearing vestments, ministers would actively need to spread the word of God, and basically existing hierarchy, bishops, archbishops, and so on, were basically needed to be replaced by a committee of elders. So some differences are there with regards to entry into heaven. It was basically you had to be as good of a Puritan as possible. So you had to be the most pious Puritan out there. All sin was sin, but at the end of the day, they believed it was entirely up to God as to whether you were granted access to heaven. So they would never really know if they were Puritan enough, basically. And but they did, in terms of education, they did place a strong emphasis on it, as well as literacy, because they wanted people to better understand the Bible. So one thing I picked up was that literacy rates in women around that time from Puritans was actually quite high, because while they weren't taught to write, they were definitely taught to read, because they needed the women to be able to read the Bible so that they could worship properly, basically.
know that.
Yeah, well, when Queen Mary...
Well, that's where it separates from the Catholic Church, because specifically the Catholic Church... So this is a big break in Puritanism as well, is that in the Catholic Church, it was all read in Latin, right?
Yeah.
In the Anglican Church and in all forms of Protestantism, it was read in whatever language the people spoke, be it German or English or whatever. And as such, women actually were maybe supposed to read a little bit more than men were, because it's kind of a womanly hobby, I guess, or womanly duty to be able to at least read the Bible, even though it's also a masculine one, so it's a bit weird. But definitely that was a big, though, break is between Latin and speaking in the local language.
Yeah. But yeah, Puritans faced a lot of persecution throughout their time, particularly when Queen Mary took the throne in 1553. She reverted the Anglican Church to Catholicism, so that was a win for Haryan, resulting in many Puritans facing exile or prosecution for failing to... Go on.
Oh, it was a very short-lived one.
Yeah.
Short-lived, but powerful in terms of the long-term implications of Mary.
Well, it wasn't. I can't remember how many years it was, but Elizabeth just came back and
it came back and reverted it. But
controls
there were long-term implications, though, within England in terms of the Catholic versus Anglican divide that continued on afterwards. Because of course the Catholics were not happy with the division. The Catholics who remained in England who weren't purged, essentially. You know.
So sort of in the early 1600s, the Puritans began fleeing England in 1608. They mainly would move to Holland initially, but by 1620 they began emigrating to America to set up new colonies there. Basically, it was build your own communities, which at the time, you know, in the New World, you could do a lot of that. Puritanism was a contributing factor towards the English Civil War, which began in 1642. So I wanted to talk to you about these Puritanic. I wanted to talk to you guys about the Puritanic beliefs, because essentially they were condensed into 5 points, which was known as TULIP. And these points were total depravity, unconditional election, limited atonement, irresistible grace, and perseverance of the saints. Now, that, for me, flies straight over my head.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean,
some of them I can speak to. Some of them also fly over my head, by the way. But the perseverance of the saints stuff, that one, you know, I had an education growing up. I went to Catholic schools. I went to a Catholic university as well, a Jesuit Catholic university. So I had a very precise Catholic, even though growing up as a kid, I was a Lutheran. My family was Lutheran.
Right.
And so
you went to Catholic school.
I didn't have a big choice. I loved my Catholic school. Not my Catholic school in middle school. My Catholic university, absolutely loved learning from those guys. The priests there, the Jesuit priests, they would have discussions with you about anything, which I really appreciated. But the saint stuff is a big issue, and still is, I believe, because the issue between the Protestants and the Catholics to this day is, should we venerate saints?
Right.
What are saints really? Like, what are they? Are they... Because the Catholic side, you pray to them. You pray to Jesus.
Right.
And you pray to Mary. And that's also a big question. You know, in the Protestant type belief, we're saying that there is the Holy Trinity, usually speaking, not in all types of Protestantism, but it's usually saying there is God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, who are one and the same, or a trinity of the three. And in the Catholic belief, there is also like, well, hang on, maybe I can't get that close to Jesus and God or the Holy Spirit because they're so far removed from me. So I can ask Saint, whoever, you know, I can ask this saint or that saint to help me with this particular thing because that's their domain. That's something they dealt with. But that is kind of, in a way, polytheism. You're now, of course, the way that Catholics explain it is that you're not praying to them to do it for you. You are praying for them to then go ask God, the Holy Spirit, or Jesus in your favor, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But it kind of feels like polytheism in many ways. I think it feels like it. It comes off like polytheism. So
yeah, but it's not polytheism, because
it's not.
They're not gods. They're just it's the spirit of the very pious people. Yeah,
you're asking Saint Francis or whoever to go ask God for you, to take care of your animals in your flock. But I think that the big issue that the Protestants had is they did not like that idea. They didn't want to pray to Mary. They didn't want to pray to Saint Francis. They wanted to pray to God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, either as one or as a series of entities. They did not like the sainthood. So that would be the P there in the tulip. That was the only thing I can provide specific information on, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it even goes beyond like praying for them. If you're a Catholic and you get confirmed, you choose the name of a saint, and that's then kind of your second middle name. So mine, because I was confirmed, is Bede, Saint Bede, from because I'm a good old English boy.
Yeah, I never got confirmed, so I didn't get that one. So whoopsie on me, but
it's never too late.
Uh-oh. It's a little bit too late for me, I think.
So saints are quite big in the Catholic Church. We have that. Like you'll have there's a lot of Saint Vincent's in England that I've seen. There's a couple of Saint Bede churches as well. Saint Joseph, Saint Mary's, things like that. They'll have pictures of the saints as well, and maybe others. And statues are like the statues of Joseph and Mary in mine, and the Puritans won't have liked that either, because it's like.
But I think they misunderstood what it was. However, I think it should be clear, though, again, in terms of what the actual theology is that it was not polytheistic, but the way that it was being practiced by regular people was often kind of polytheistic.
Yeah.
It was having a little shrine, maybe in your house or in your garden to a certain saint, and that I think came off to the Puritans as polytheistic, even if it wasn't.
Right. Yeah, and like with let's say a pilgrimage site like Lourdes, that's all to do with like Mary, Mother of God. Everything there is like a Mary statue. There's more Mary than Jesus, and then there's Saint
it's all Mary
as well.
Yeah.
I've been there like 5 times. It's crazy. So again, Puritans wouldn't be happy with that, but I think what happened in Lourdes was after kind of this. I can't remember when Lourdes was. The miracle at Lourdes happened, but I think it was 1700s. But it was after this, I think, anyway. So
I think 7. Yeah, and Celestine prophecy and all that stuff. That was later.
So the Puritans would have hated it. I know some Anglicans that hate it as well, because like, oh, it's not Jesus. Like, yeah, I know, but Mary was pretty big, birthing God.
Well, why Mary is important? Just to we'll go ahead.
No,
go
no, it's fine. I was done.
No, the whole thing is that Mary is human. Jesus is God. But Mary is human with a connection to God, and that's why Catholics, relate to Mary as she's the one of those intermediaries who can help you talk to God, and that's the whole idea of the saints and Mary in particular, and why she's so important to the Catholic Church, because she helps us talk to God or relate our feelings or our sins or our whatever to God, however you perceive him to be, as a trinity, as a singularity, or a trinity as 3 separate beings. And that I understand why Catholics and why that is a useful idea, because we are mortals, and so was Mary. That's why Mary is important, and the saints, that's why they are important as well, because we can understand them.
Apparently follow that red mage says Mary is Batman, Jesus is Superman. And then the next question is, who would win?
Oh, God. Well, that's another year in purgatory if I answer that. So. Dear.
You sort of touched upon the Puritans being a bit of a boring bunch.
They banned Christmas.
They did in 1659. Puritans in Massachusetts indeed banned Christmas. There were other things as well that Puritans didn't like. That included gambling, adultery, obviously, fancy clothing, living with Indians for some reason, and smoking. So,
well, yeah. I take it that means native Indians rather than
you see, as I literally light a cigarette, but
I don't know. I could really do with a cigarette.
But sorry.
You go for it. Missing Sunday services apparently could see you sent to the stock. So look at that happy chap there. He pulled a Homer Simpson. So yeah, I mean, essentially what it boiled down to was Puritan communities were essentially hyper-religious groups, strict rules, harsh punishments if you failed to adhere to the word of God. So you had to sort of follow the crowd in that regard, and otherwise, social stigmas, and there were a lot of social punishments in those days. Interestingly, are you aware of the halfway covenant, Haryan? Any idea what that is? Okay, so essentially,
I'm not either.
So basically, this was the TLDR version of it is essentially as time grew, and we'll get to it in a bit more detail as we get into sort of like the divisions of the town and village, but essentially, as the years went on, as you can appreciate, it's quite hard to get into Puritan. It's quite hard to be accepted into the Puritan church based on the sort of like hoops you have to jump through in order to sort of prove your worth. And so basically the halfway covenant was essentially like a halfway sort of like house for it, so you could gain like partial membership to the church, so you'd be recognized as a member, but you may not have all the sorts all sort of like the privileges of that a full member would get. Some were for it, some were against it. Those who were against it felt like basically it was people trying to half-ass their way into heaven, and not sort of like pulling their weight. So yeah, but one of the things that you would have to do if you wanted to be a full member of the church of Puritanism was that you have to publicly confess to all the sins that you committed throughout your life, as well as what was it? As sort of ways that you'll repent as well. So it was quite a personal thing that you'd have to do, and it was quite difficult for a lot of people to do. They considered it quite invasive, and so basically they just sacked it off, didn't join. So hence why the halfway covenant was brought up, rather than having to confess your sins to a whole crowd of like to an entire town. You basically did it in you did like private confession sessions.
Like the Catholics,
like the Catholics, essentially. Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, exactly.
So they didn't quite get rid of everything from the Catholic Church.
No, it was very it's early, so it's early splitting off, so it has the same kind of stuff. That's not surprising. Yeah. I didn't know about that though. It's interesting.
Yeah, I think it goes deeper in it goes, as I say, it goes much deeper than just Salem. The halfway covenant was a thing. I think before that, it was just dwindling numbers in Salem with people essentially signing up to be the church. So they brought this in to try and like get people in, and it pissed quite a few people off, to say the least. There were a couple of big families as well in the town and villages of Salem. One of those families was the Porters. They were apparently the richest family in Salem at the time that the witch trials took place. Joseph, Israel, and Benjamin Porter sort of made up the bulk of the sort of business owners, and they owned up to 2,000 acres of land in Salem at the time. They specialised in trading lumber, and they owned three out of the four sawmills in Salem at that time. So they were quite heavily invested in Salem, because they would then sell the lumber to the town so that they could for construction. They actually lived in the village. Now, interestingly, at this time, so I talked about the halfway covenant causing a bit of a stir. So the people of the town essentially loved it. It was kind of modernized. It was a bit more modernizing for them, as you get with like big cities and towns, of course. But the people in the village utterly hated it. Now, the Porters, however, they lived in the village, and yet they were in support of the halfway covenant in the town, because they didn't really want the existing arrangements between Salem's town and village to be disrupted, because there was, we'll get into it in a little bit, but there were murmurings and attempts to try and break away for the village to try and break away from the town. The Porters didn't want that because their business was heavily reliant on them. And then you had the Putnams. So the Putnam family were the second richest family in Salem, and they also lived in the village. Their father, John Sr., and his three sons, Thomas, Nathaniel, and John Putnam Jr., again, made up the running of the family business. Thomas had 9 children from 2 marriages. Unlike the Porters, while they were minted, their businesses weren't directly tied to Salem, so they weren't affected. So they wouldn't have been impacted if there were any sort of like structural changes within Salem that would sort of disrupt any sort of trade and anything along those lines. They had other sort of like pies in, had other thumbs in pies, if you will. But unlike the Porters, they vehemently opposed the halfway covenant. So they were living that trad life, basically. Believed firmly that the town was straying. They actually believed the town was straying from God, and essentially that the townsfolk were becoming more interested in money and material possessions. Big no-nos in Puritanism. Love God, not money. Mm-hmm. And then, when Thomas Putnam's, I'll call him Putman there, Putnam Senior died in 1686, there was an assumption that his wealth would be divided equally among the family. However, his wife Mary Putnam inherited everything. Now, Mary was the second wife of Thomas Senior, and mother of Thomas's only child, Joseph. But she was also the daughter of Israel Porter and the granddaughter of William Hawthorne from Salem Town. So basically, the Putnams were outraged that effectively the Porters had come into wealth that Thomas had passed on to Mary. So Thomas dies, Porters get richer, Putnam's mad.
She's a witch.
Obviously. How could that have happened?
So yeah, so as I mentioned, there were divisions sort of brewing between the town and village. So over the time, two communities would essentially sort of like start to fracture. Villagers grew frustrated at having to travel. Oh yeah, that's one thing. So there was a church, obviously, in Salem Town, but the villagers didn't have their own one, so they'd have to travel about some sources say 10 miles, others say 12 miles into town to attend church, as well as having to undertake other duties such as night watching, because obviously they would, every so often they'd be raided by Native Americans, blah blah blah, that sort of thing. But so they had to trawl all the way into town to do that. They weren't happy with that, naturally, because of their contributions that they felt they were making towards the town via the village. They felt like they were being taken for granted. So the villagers, as I say, they were mainly farmers and agriculture. They worked in farming and agriculture, and so they were heavily involved in the production of grain and other produce, and basically were unhappy with the returns they were getting. And so ultimately, the villagers wanted their own church close to the village so that they could, worship there. But the town said no. And in 1666, a number of farmers in Salem Village petitioned for independence from Salem Town. Salem Town went nope, on the grounds basically that they didn't want to lose the resources the village was providing, nor did they wish to trade or pay tax for this grain or produce. So they thought, well, if they split up, we're going to have to start paying for this stuff, essentially, where essentially you had like free trade going on. As I mentioned, there were religious differences from the separation of the town and village. As I say, villagers believed the town were straying from God. Another petition was to separate the town and village would be taken to Boston courts. But Boston basically just went, look, sort it yourselves. We're not getting involved in this. You deal with it yourselves. And so there were negotiations that took place over a number of years. And I think it was after 2 years of negotiating, Salem Town basically went, all right, guys, you can have your church, you can go there and pray, but any legal matters, you still have to come into the town to sort out. So it wasn't the desired outcome for the village, but they got their little win. All right. Introducing Samuel Parris. So obviously with a new church being built, with a new church being built, they needed a new minister for that church, and they did have some ministers come in before Samuel, but there's not really a lot of information that I was able to get at the time. But eventually, Samuel Parris would come to Salem. Now, Samuel was born in London in 1653, and his father Thomas Parris ran a successful sugar plantation in Barbados. One of the things you're going to spot from this presentation is pretty much everybody has the same bloody name. They're either Thomas, Joseph, John, Jonathan. It gets confusing.
Well, yeah, it was at the time.
Yeah, they
had to take a Christian name, and you're pretty much you have a short list.
Like even the women, even the mothers gave their girls the same name as the mums, and it's just like okay. But yeah, basically, his father, Thomas Parris, ran a successful sugar plantation in Barbados. And in the early 1660s, he actually emigrated to Boston, where he attended Harvard. When his father died in 1673, he left Harvard to maintain the sugar plantation his father had left him. He was basically compelled to do it. He was like, yeah, I've got to go. But it didn't last long. After a hurricane hit Barbados, along with a smallpox outbreak, by 1680, most of the land and property that he owned was ruined. It was destroyed. So he basically sold up and returned to Boston. But he would bring over two of his slaves, a woman called Tituba and another slave called John Indian. While in Boston, he would later marry a woman named Elizabeth Eldridge, and the pair would have 3 children, Thomas Parris, Betty, and Susanna. They would also become legal guardians for a girl called Abigail Williams, who was the niece of Samuel. Basically, her parents were killed by Native Americans during a raid, so she went and stayed with them.
Of course, Tom Parris would go on to be the pilot of the starship Voyager many years later.
As you do, yes.
Sorry.
I didn't realise it was around that timeline.
Well, no, Tom Parris is the name of the guy who's the Voyager.
Here we go. While in Boston, Samuel would actually reconnect with some of his friends within the Puritan movement, and he would actually later join his uncle at Boston Puritan Church. Now, while he wasn't ordained at the time, he was approached by the Putnams, who offered him the chance to become the minister at Salem Village. He would becoming then the 4th minister for Salem Village. And again, despite not being ordained, he felt like he was ready. And so in 1689, travelled to Salem, and there he was ordained by the community. But Samuel Parris would quickly become a controversial figure within Salem. Salem opposed the halfway covenant, refusing membership to anyone who practiced it, as well as denying communion. I think you mentioned that, Haryan. They denied communion.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So there you go. These views infuriated the Porters, who were pro halfway, and as such, because the Porters were actually on the tax committee in Salem, it got to a point where they were like, "Yeah, we're not going to pay you anymore."
Wow, cancel culture.
Always a motivating factor.
Yeah. So they refused to pay salary, and they even, now bearing in mind, I don't know what the climate's like, but I mean, bearing in mind no electricity, no sort of like gas, you imagine how cold the winters would get. They even refused to supply him with firewood.
Well, I know how cold it is.
Yeah.
It's significantly below freezing.
Right, I mean, you need to keep yourself warm, like really warm.
Right. Oh, right. Yeah. But then also it can become blisteringly hot in the summer, even in New England, and it sucks. It's very difficult if you're not used to that.
Yeah. I think we're just disconnected for. I think, guys, are we?
Yeah,
it
broke up for a second.
It's back up for me. I saw it disconnect. It'll be fine.
Sorry about that. But yeah, since I moved to the UK and being like, it's it never gets hotter than like 25 year long. It's quite nice.
Yeah. It gets above 10 degrees. It's tops off time.
Yeah, but in the US it can get so cold. Yeah. It can get so cold and so hot in the exact same area. So that's why I think that a lot of these people were not prepared for some of that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Like the most extreme in the UK, I think, is the southeast, where like the warmest, but still the warmest it gets is like 25.
Yeah.
Then the coldest. I
don't think we've ever seen anything above like 25, 30. Like, I remember this is a total aside, but I guess as the stream's coming back, I don't know if you saw like last year there was someone complaining about how hot it was, and they took a Magnum. Is that what they're called? Those chocolate bars. Yeah. And they put it out on their balcony, and they left it there for like 30 minutes, and it melted. And they were like, "Oh my god, it's so hot!" And me as an American, I went, "Oh my, that's nothing." But okay.
Yeah, I used to live with a guy from Cyprus, and while we were wearing shorts in the middle of England when it was like 20 degrees, he was like, "God, it's freezing," and was like wearing jumpers and long trousers and things.
I wear a jumper all year long living here. Yeah. I can't deal with it's cold to me. But I will say America's got a very, even in the Northeast like that, a very wildly disparate temperatures from summer to winter, where it will be frozen, negative degrees, very negative degrees. You get snow, obviously, in the winter, and you get blistering heat in the summer, and there's no way to even determine or predict it.
So weather might have caused the witch trials as well. There you go.
There we go.
Well, I guess that's more climate, actually.
I think it probably could. People were pissed, because it's so freaking hot.
I mean, to be fair, I get quite cranky when it gets above 27 degrees Celsius. So
exactly,
if, and if I'm having to sort of dress modestly and quite like thickly and like all that weather, I'll be no, I wouldn't be a happy chap.
I would easily get 35 in New England in the summer.
No, I dip out at 27. I've always said that, especially with my wife. I'm like anything above that, and I'm like, nope, we're not doing anything. So I wanted to sort of like go into sort of detail about the family, the history, and sort of like the disputes going on, because it's quite interesting. Because at the time, because again, like, I knew nothing, so I just assumed it was a bunch of like paranoid people at the time, genuinely in the beliefs. But there are sort of some seeds being planted in preparation for what was about to happen. And so, in 1692, Samuel's daughter Betty, who was 9, and again the niece Abigail, would be struck down with an unknown ailment, and it was this. I know, right? It was discovered that Betty and Abigail had been toying with the Venus glass technique in the winter of 1691. So for those who don't know what the Venus glass technique is, basically it involves dropping an egg white into a glass of water and observing the shape of it. And what this would do is it would do things like it would predict your future. Basically, if you were a woman, who are you going to marry, and where are you going to be on the social ladder? However, the girls instead witnessed a coffin when they tried to do this, so understandably quite pranged out. And it wouldn't be long after that Abigail would begin having fits, writhing and contorting her body, screaming that an unseen force was hurting her. She'd go like underneath the tables and sort of like shake and convulse, and it was quite disturbing for Samuel. And she would regularly pass out, obviously, from that. Betty then would soon exhibit the same symptoms. But Samuel had actually come across this before. So in 1688, this is while he was still in Boston, essentially in priest training or minister training. He'd been called to the Goodwin residence, where the children there were showing the same symptoms, and they were blaming a neighbour of theirs, Goody Glover. Now, Goody Glover, otherwise known as Anne Glover.
Oh, yeah.
You know this one?
This. Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
So he wasn't massively involved, but he had seen what happened to the girls. But just to give a background for those who don't know, she was an elderly woman who came from Ireland. Both Anne, or Goody, and her daughter worked for a man called John Goodwin as housekeepers until Anne was accused by 13-year-old Martha Goodwin of stealing laundry from them. She was like, no, that's absolute rubbish. Don't know what you're talking about. And basically argued with the Goodwins, allegedly ending with Anne cursing Martha. And like Betty and Abigail, the doctor at the time had no idea what was going on. And it was quite common for doctors at that time. If they could see no physical problem that they could diagnose, they would just go, bewitched.
Yep, you have to understand that what a doctor was in 1680 was barbarism.
Exactly.
It was barely more than witchcraft itself in terms of what we would commonly perceive of as witchcraft.
Imagine plying your trade in a business where essentially you were just sort of blagging it and making up the best guess you can and just trying anything, and even then being like, I don't know what's going on here. But eventually, Goody, or Anne, would be arrested and tried for witchcraft. She was, get this right, she was accused of speaking the language of the devil, when in fact she was just speaking Irish. And at her trial, she was ordered to recite.
Same thing.
At her trial, she was ordered to recite the Lord's Prayer, but could only do this in Irish and broken Latin. And so they were just like, aha! See?
Yeah, I mean, thank God there wasn't a Welshoid there. Speaking as a Welsh person myself, they definitely would have thought that was Satan's speech. Incomprehensible.
So basically what you're saying is thank God Haryan wasn't there at the time.
Right, I suppose so. Yeah. Oh, are you Welsh?
No. The name I chose is actually from The Witcher, but it obviously the elder language from that comes from Welsh, so everyone calls me Welsh. Yeah. No, I am fully blown English, luckily.
They searched her home, found small images and doll-like figures were found, and eventually she would be found guilty of witchcraft and sentenced to death by hanging. Famously,
dolls were found in a girl's room. Like,
I know.
Wow.
I know.
No shit.
I know, right? What are you doing with these dolls?
Oh God, yeah.
Casting spells. So yeah, she would be hanged on the 16th of November 1688, and she would actually become the last person in Boston to be hanged as a witch. Is that how you know that one? Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm aware of Goody. The thing is, though, that's also interesting to bring up is that at this time in England as well, all this stuff was happening too. It's weird that the Salem Witch Trials always get kind of brought up as a exemplar of like America being particularly puritanical, while this exact same stuff I will say it had been happening like a century beforehand in England and Scotland and Wales and Ireland. But it kind of like for whatever reason it has become mythologized in America about because there are a lot of very similar stories that have happened in England where it's a local woman usually who is a healer of some sort, and she gets accused of witchcraft, even though she's usually an older woman or a woman who is doesn't have children, either or, and who gets accused of witchcraft, who was up until the point of the big puritanical sort of divide, up until then just seen as a healer. But when that divide happens religiously, then suddenly she becomes seen as a or it happened to men as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It becomes seen as a heretic or becomes seen as a witch, even though up until then they had been a liked member of the community.
Yeah, I would say that was very true. Yeah, they were seen as a positive influence on the community. Love potions and all that.
Yeah, they do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they weren't harming anybody in that respect. But then,
well, grinding up weeds and I mean that could make you sick, but probably not very much.
No.
But
I mean, interestingly, at the time of the Salem Witch Trials, it was definitely it was on the decline around Europe. But the interesting thing about Salem itself is one of the witch trials that historians will point to because it's such a famous case. But there are other cases out there. I mean, in Europe, I mean, I think it's the Würzburg trials, the Würzburg trials in Germany.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking like 600 women, men and women were killed, and it was a dreadful time to be out there. Something like 50,000 men and women lost their lives through witch trials across Europe. I read somewhere.
Enormous amounts of people. Yeah. It went on for 300 to 400 years.
Yeah,
people were persecuting people for being witches, and I think that some of the latest examples occurred up past the Salem witch trials, but predominantly in Europe they had preceded it, and Europe had kind of collectively gotten over it, I would say, in the 1600s, but it just popped up back again in the United States in this isolate sort of situation. And it's odd to me, though, that we've not just us here talking about it, but that the Salem witch trials have become so iconographic in that how terrible we can be to people and to portray them as witches. But this had been happening for 300 years beforehand.
This was very much a cultural norm across America, well, across Europe.
Well, across Europe.
I mean, it was Europe that it was Europeans that brought it to America. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. It was.
More specifically, the English, really.
Yeah, not
even that. Not even that. I mean, again, Europeans. I think if you look at the death toll across Europe, I mean, it was much higher than what the English had done. I think I said during the Matthew Hopkins speech time, I think it was around sort of like 600 or like about 600 witches compared to sort of like 10 in like 100 years.
Right.
In Europe, in England, it was. But
it's just interesting how not just we, but everyone does focus on this particular instance when this had been going on for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
I mean, anywhere, like even in the isolated area I live in, when I actually just went to go look up, because I was trying to find to find on Wikipedia a specific instance of witch hunting that I remembered reading a story about, well, a story, but like historical account about, in the UK, and I found the exact place I live, and they were like the exact history of. Well, I'll give the general area exact history of witch hunting in the Channel Islands, and I was like, oh wow, I didn't know about that was a thing. It has its own Wikipedia article, which I wasn't expecting, but apparently that was a whole huge thing here, and I didn't know about. But like, it was a thing all over Europe to hunt witches for hundreds of years. But it was this particular instance in America has become mythologized for some reason.
Do you
Maybe
think,
because it's worst? It's the worst. I don't know.
I don't even think it was.
Though?
I don't even think that's the thing. I don't even think it's the worst.
Yeah.
I think. Do you think it's perhaps because it was so well documented? Because
that probably makes more sense.
Yeah, because I mean, comparison to sort of other trials and. Excuse me, sort of like witch trials and witch hunts going on around that time. I don't think any of them were as well documented as this, and I think a lot of the theatrics as well that went into play. And again, we'll get into it a bit later on.
I think it's the theatrics. I think it's the theatrics and the social identity stuff that I'll bring up in terms of my psychological background. I think that's what really makes. But that stuff happened in all of those.
This is it.
Instances.
It's so.
They happened in England. They happened in England. We saw the same stuff.
Well,
we saw the children turning on the parents. We saw all of that. It wasn't just here. It happened beforehand.
I mean, Harry, and you'll know Matthew Hopkins. When we covered that on Proper Horror Shows channel, he had a hold over the whole east side of England. When he walked into town, that man just needed to point his finger, and that's it. Everyone. It was incredible. It was incredible.
I'm trying to remember, and you guys probably know this better than I do because I cannot think of this woman's name. But there was a woman, it was somewhere. I think it was in the UK, but I don't remember if it was England or Scotland or Ireland. But she was a local healer. And then it was an almost identical situation to Salem, where a bunch of local kids came out against her. She was a local healer. This was probably back in like the 1600s, around the same time. And she was a widow, and they all came out against her. And basically the town just like murdered this woman collectively.
Yeah.
She was, her name is, it's right there in the back of my head. But she was like a local healing woman. And they did this exact same stuff happened against her. It did occur on both sides of the big pond. This was happening simultaneously. And I wish I could remember her name, but it was a similar thing where she was just an old healer woman who got accused of this stuff. I'd have to try to remember it, but it definitely has happened in England as well. It's just not as well known for whatever reason.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I didn't even know about Matthew Hopkins until we watched The Witchfinder General. I didn't even know.
It might be the Pendle Witch Trials. Horace the Moo Cow. I can't remember. Sorry, I'm looking at chat because I can't remember. I'm really trying to remember who this was.
While you bring that up, while you look for that, I want to talk about a woman called Sarah Good.
Oh yes.
So Samuel Parris was obviously, he was racking his brains trying to figure out what was going on, how had this evil got into his home, and he thought to himself of a time when he was greeted at his door by a woman called Sarah Good. Now, she was a local woman who originally had come from a well-to-do family, but after her father died, the estate that he had was divided up between her mother and two sons. But basically, she screwed her and her 6 sisters out of the inheritance. Her husband, a guy called Daniel Paul, was also an indentured servant who died in 1682. She would remarry a man named William Good, but she would lose basically what she managed to get a tiny amount of portion of land that the father had left, but she would actually lose that. after William died, and essentially was just roaming the streets, homeless. She also had a daughter, Dorothy, and she was also pregnant at the time. Now, she knocked on Samuel's door, basically begging, asking for money, blah, blah, blah. And he basically turned her away. Now, he remembered that as Sarah was going away, she was muttering something. He didn't know what it was, but given the fact that he had his daughter and niece essentially spurging out in the home, flying around all over the place and whatnot, he believed that at that moment Sarah had placed a curse on the family. It was after a month or so. Salem's Dr. William Grigg, not the Northern Ireland footballer, was called after a month. That's a football reference. I'm
not interested in that.
I know you're not.
Absolutely could not care less. I will say, however, real quick, Horace the Moo Cow, thank you so much, gave me the correct thing, which was the Pendle Witch Trials that happened. They started in 1612.
Right.
And those were what I was thinking of. And one of the women I mentioned, I can't remember which one, was the woman I talked about who was like just an old lady who got accused of this. 500 executions at a minimum in that one. So that was in 1612, just to put this into perspective. And sorry, let's go ahead. But to put this into perspective, in 1612, more than 500 executions.
Yeah, it's mad. It's mad. But yet this one grabs all the attention. So, after the doctor, the physician came around and was like, I don't know what's wrong with the girls. They're under a spell. They're under a spell. That's it. They're bewitched. On the 25th of February, 1692, Samuel and Elizabeth, so Samuel Parris and his wife, attended church to pray for the girls. But while they were out, they were left in the care of Tituba and John Indian, and also a neighbour called Mary Sibley. Now, Mary Sibley saw how much distress the girls were in and wanted to offer her assistance. And while living in England, Mary remembered a remedy that could possibly help: witch cakes. So Mary instructed John Indian and Tituba to gather up the ingredients required to make the cake. And for this now, we resort to John Dee's cookbook. Wee.
John Dee's nuts. Sorry. I can't help myself.
Oh my God.
I can't help myself. I'm sorry.
Got it.
Got it.
So witch cakes. So witch cakes were believed to be a way to identify whether an individual had been afflicted by a witch's spell. Therefore, if a witch had directed their magic onto a person, it would also flow through the contents, I'm air quoting here, of that person. Now, witch cakes were considered as white magic. So white magic is obviously the opposite of black magic. It's magic that is used for good purposes. Now, it's a rather simple recipe, thankfully, that Dee left in his cookbook. It contained the following: rye meal, plenty of it, and also the afflicted person's urine. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you aware of it's a very old thing in the Septuagint in the Torah, which was the way to determine if a woman was unfaithful was to have her drink the contents of the altar. So they would swipe all the old rotten meat and the ash from burnt offerings, and they put it into a cup and have a woman drink it. And if she got sick from it, they'd say she'd been unfaithful. Yeah. This goes back thousands of years, this kind of stuff. By the way, it's very old.
Yeah, but so yeah, exactly. So the logic, the logic behind it was pretty much the same. After you've made the cake, you would feed it to a dog, and it was said that if the dog was eating it, if there was a witchcraft present, then if there was a witch present, excuse me, then the witch would suffer pain as a result of the dog eating the piss and rye cake, basically. And as you can imagine, there was no sort of telltale signs. Nothing sort of interesting happened, except a dog ate this cake. So poor doggo.
Yeah, poor guy.
But man, dogs would just eat anything, wouldn't they?
Well, true. We have two dogs, and whenever I cook,
Oh,
they will not. They just obsessively. However, it's good. If I drop something on the floor, I don't have to run the vacuum cleaner. They'll eat it. But don't be surprised then when the dog eats the piss cake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, he's enjoying that piss cake. I'll make some more. However,
no, it's sick.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, it's sick. Oh, wait a minute, is the dog the witch? Oh, we'll come to that. So yeah, it didn't have the desired effect in terms of smoking out a witch, but what did happen was that Betty and Abigail's symptoms got worse. They claimed to see the dark shape of a person attacking them, and when they asked the girls who the dark shape was, they said it was Tituba. Boom, boom, boom. Or, as my chapters go,
I'm scared.
Let's talk about Tituba. So she alleged that the girls, Abigail and Betty, alleged that the spirit of Tituba would slap and pinch them, and the spirit would laugh while doing so. But when Samuel Parris approached Tituba with the accusation, she basically denied it and went, "Wasn't me, but you need to know about what Mary Sibley's been doing with your dog and your kid's urine." And so he found out about the witch cakes and was, obviously being quite the Puritan, he was quite angry that magic had been used in his home and believed that as a result the devil had been invited into their home. So Parris called upon the other ministers to inspect the girls, and word soon went around that Salem village that there was a witch among them. 2 days after Witch Cake Gate, as I call it. I know, right? 2 days after...
Almost like women are catty. And that's maybe what was happening here.
Yeah.
You are such a sexist.
I know, I certainly am. But this sounds like what we would call today a canceling. But this is two women being catty at each other. To be fair, Tituba, I don't know if it was really covered, was not quite a slave, but basically a second-class citizen. And probably wanted to try and get one over on Whitey.
Yeah.
I mean, totally justified probably from her perspective, okay?
Well, I mean, there were rumors that she, I didn't include this in it, but there were rumors that she practiced voodoo, and apparently the Venus technique that the girls used, where they saw the coffin in the egg white, Tituba actually told them how to do that, basically. So there were already rumors about that, unsubstantiated, I will add, but nonetheless possible. But of course, as sort of word spread, William Griggs's niece Elizabeth Hubbard was walking into town on an errand, where she felt as though she was being followed, and as she continued to travel, she spotted a wolf, but it wasn't an ordinary wolf. The animal was large, dark, and had glowing yellow eyes. It was a witch's familiar.
Like a wolf,
like a wolf,
but whatever.
But it was familiar. It was a witch's familiar. She just knew. Believe me, guys. Trust me. Okay. Elizabeth Hubbard learned that the familiar, the dog, or the wolf, I should say, answered to Sarah Good, obviously the homeless beggar, and told her uncle. And Elizabeth would also accuse another woman called Sarah Osborne. Thomas Putnam Jr. visited the Parrises to check on the girls. Horrified at their condition, he would tell his family upon returning, only for Annie Putnam, one of the young girl within the Putnam family, to fall to the same affliction just days later. So what you're seeing is...
What a shock.
I know, right? So this is obviously we'll get... Again, I keep saying it, we'll get to the point where we'll start talking about theories and stuff, but...
Oh, it's called social contagion, but that's okay. I'll spill the beans a little early.
Exactly, yeah. No, but it's exactly it, though, isn't it? I mean, you're seeing that these girls, a pattern of behaviour is beginning to emerge now. It didn't get better for the town of Salem. There was a storm that ravaged through the following weekend, and Thomas Putnam, along with 3 other men, travelled to Salem town to meet the local magistrates to discuss what was happening. So Jonathan Hawthorne and Jonathan Corwin, upon hearing of the news of witches in Salem village, immediately began to look at ways of preventing this spreading into the town. Up until recently, Salem would follow what was called the Massachusetts Bay Charter, issued by King Charles I, which had clear guidelines and rules around dealing with witches. But one problem. In 1684, England annulled the charter due to repeated violations of its terms. This included things like trading with countries that the English didn't quite want America to trade with, like China, for example.
Well, not just China, but other European countries that were trying to trade, particularly Spain. How about that?
Yeah, exactly. So basically England just went, do you know what, that charter that we made for you guys? Nah, screw it. So essentially the guys in Salem, the magistrates there, essentially had to go back to sort of square one. Because previously, when it came to witch trials in England, you had to have solid evidence. Like there had to be something there, and I'm saying solid with air quotes, but there had to be something.
well, again, go look at those. Pendle trial, the Pendle witch trials, they were the same thing. Yeah. And again, thank you for the chat for bringing it up, but it was the same thing 100 years before this.
I mean, again, you're talking about an impossible standard to reach anyway, because obviously, you can't. It works anyway. But
quote evidence is. Of course, I understand that being a witch at the time, what was the not at this point, but previously, the one of the ways of testing to be a witch was throw her into water. If she sinks and dies, she's not a witch. If she floats, she is a witch and need to be burned at the stake. So you kind of had the same outcome either way, you know?
You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Oh, super chat. Hello. Proper horror show. Oh, thank you. £5.
You're monetized.
Of course I am.
Go on.
Fascinating stuff and great stream idea. By the way, what's Aydin's take on Destiny's Child?
Bloody
hell. Bro, I haven't listened to Destiny's Child since like the early 2000s.
But you can confirm that you know who they are, right?
Yeah, it's a pop group.
There you go, Haryan. See, there we go.
See, I don't think I have a strong opinion either way on them.
That's fine.
Sorry.
It's
a channel meme.
It's an in-house meme. Yeah, don't worry.
Because I didn't know who Destiny's Child was on one of the first episodes of Proper Horror Show stream. I'm not worried about it. I'll just get bullied for it.
Oh, don't get bullied. I can't recall a single Destiny's Child. Actually, if I heard one, I'd know it, but I can't recall one off the top of my head.
Well, that was the thing. I know some of their songs. I just didn't know it was Destiny's Child, and I'm like, I don't know who they are, but I know like.
You thought it was Steve Bonnell, Destiny from Twitch, and it was his. Talking about his
Destiny's kid. So, guys, I hear you want to talk about my kids, but obviously, I'm going to have to talk about your kids. But
good, that was great. That was really accurate.
Not just as nonsensical. Anyway. Apparently you've passed the test, Aydin. You are not a witch, according to Proper Horror Show.
Oh, good. I am a witch, though. Sorry, whoopsie.
Oh no!
Wow.
I'm sorry. That's the problem with these witch tests. They don't work. Yeah. I'm a filthy heathen. I don't know if people knew that. Oh, everyone here probably does.
Funnily enough, they realised this after a while, especially in Salem. Actually, they did realise this, that anybody could be a witch. If Jesus could be seduced by the devil, then so could the most pious Puritan.
Of course.
Where was I? Oh yeah, so England don't like America anymore, and they're starting to revoke charters. So one of the things about the Massachusetts Bay Charter as well was that if you were to bring forth an accusation of witchcraft, you had to basically pay like a bond. And so you essentially like, yeah, okay, I'm that confident, I'll put money on it. Worst case scenario.
I'm kind of confident enough that I'll put some money down. But
well, it basically at the end of the day, if you were found to be chatting rubbish, then obviously you'd lose that money. So there was
how cool, like if you have money, basically if you had any degree of money, you could just accuse someone you don't like, who's a nasty person in the community that you don't like. And let's be clear, I don't want to jump the gun too much, but this is women doing it to other women because they had personal beefs with them. That's how women operate. Not always, but often. They get personal beefs with one another, and this is just an old school version of what happens now, not with cancel culture, because cancel culture is too precise, it's too generalized. This is women hating other women. I do think that's what the Salem Witch Trial was about, and witch trials in general. Women don't like other women, because it's always women.
As I say, I think, no, that's fine. I think, as we said at the beginning of the stream, though, I think that obviously, I think that was one factor, one contributing factor. There were other factors as well, I think, were in play.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of it's women hating their neighbors.
Yeah, so the Putnams in particular, we talk about paying bonds. Now, the Putnams were probably the type of family that could afford to pay a bond and accuse the odd witch here or there. But because there was no Massachusetts Bay Charter in place, guess what they didn't have to do? They didn't have to pay. They didn't have to pay a bond. So,
oh my,
yeah,
good for you.
So they so they formally accused Tituba, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osborne. They were all arrested in March 1692. I love this. So a witch pursuit thingy is underway. So first, shout out to 42 for that title. I was watching his video, and the way he just sort of like, a witch pursuit thingy was underway, and I was like, brilliant.
A thingy, yeah. That's a good way to describe it.
good way of describing a witch hunt, mate. Yeah.
But how fascinating, right? How fascinating, though, that Tituba also gets brought into this, right? Who's an accuser. She gets brought into it. And the reason Tituba does, I believe, is because she's not white. She gets brought into it because she's the accuser. She had a personal beef with these women. They had personal issues. She gets brought in because she's not white.
Yeah.
And that's, it just turns into, this is, again, me going back to, I'm sorry if I'm jumping the gun here.
Go for it.
This is all just women hating on each other and kind of reaping the oats of what they've sown by starting this interpersonal social science, social identity, excuse me, not social science, social identity conflict that could have been resolved in any way other than killing each other. But unfortunately, that's the way that it manifested. So,
yeah, it was just crazy. But interestingly about Tituba, she would, as you would later find out, she would eventually confess to being a witch. And she basically just shopped a bunch of people and basically told them what they wanted to hear.
Exactly.
She actually would end up surviving. Interestingly, she wasn't hanged. She was just sentenced to. She was just sent to jail basically, and was eventually later released and put back into the care of. Well, I was put back into the care. What a way of.
Well, she tattled. She tattled, quote unquote, tattled on everyone. That's what got her out. By saying by saying what they wanted to hear.
Yeah, and actually, many of the women who were accused would actually confess. Now there was a thought process behind that. One of it was if you were basically Puritans, obviously, you know, a sin is a sin. And so in their mind, if you were accused of being a witch, I mean, you were as good as a witch, right? So you had a choice. You either say you're innocent. Okay, you've now just lied. So that's another sin on top of the current sin that you're being accused of. So now you're going to die, more or less. But if you were to plead guilty, then you're expressing
and you out some other witches.
But you're also expressing remorse and that's repentance and that's good for Puritans because you know you're acknowledging that you've sinned and that it's like the first stage of trying to
but for them it wasn't just about repentance because they do believe. They felt that repentance had to be paid in fire. It was having to turn other people over.
Yeah.
And that would be your penance. And so, of course, the people who... Now, we'll get more into the social identity stuff here and why the psychology. But when your option is die or turn in other people who aren't guilty just so that the penance that's being placed on you will be placed upon them.
Yeah.
Well... The choice is fairly obvious. I don't even think that's like complicated psychology. Everyone probably gets that. You want to save your own skin. Come on now.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. And you know that was the main driving force behind a lot of the guilty confessions. It was just to save your own skin. Look, I'll do whatever you want. Just get me out of this situation, basically. I wanted to talk a little bit about Annie Putnam. For a bit, because obviously
very interesting person.
Yeah, so we've had Abigail and Betty sort of start the whole thing with their theatrics, and it started to spread through to certain other girls in the village. Annie Putnam would essentially go into overdrive. Remember Sarah Good, the homeless lady?
Yep.
Well, Annie would accuse her 5-year-old daughter Dorothy of demanding that Annie sign the Book of the Devil.
Yep.
Wow. How did a 5-year-old manage that?
Wow. You tell me. You tell me. And a week later, she would accuse a woman named Elizabeth Proctor, who was a pregnant mother of 5 and also part of the Proctor family, another family of rivals to the Putnams, another family sort of dispute there. Elizabeth's grandmother was also accused of. Didn't really put it neatly there, but there were already sort of questions around Elizabeth Proctor anyway, because her grandmother was accused of witchcraft around 30 years prior to the Salem Witch Trials, and she was also known to allow Native Americans into the tavern that she and her husband ran.
Yeah, well, Anne Putnam was, as I described earlier, she was a woman who wanted attention.
Yeah,
she wanted all of the attention of Salem to be on her.
Mm-hmm.
That was exactly what she was. There are many other examples of this within the totality of witch trials that happened across the world. But Anne Putnam is an excellent example of an attention whore. And there's no better word that I can, or phrase that I can come up with to describe what she was. She wanted to be the center of attention.
Absolutely.
And she had extreme dislike of her own family members. So these were personal disputes that she had that she wanted to get taken care of. Yeah. And she wanted to be she wanted to be elevated into a Christ-like status by saying, "Oh, I'm going to save the town by outing all these witches." And when you understand, again, social identity stuff, she saw herself as a savior for this particular town and elevated herself to that position. And that's why she did. In my, armchair psychology position, and I'm not a psychologist, I'm a social psychologist, which is like a bullshit thing, but and this was very much trying to gain power within the community by elevating herself, I believe. And I think that, and people looking at this retrospectively should see that same stuff, where this is a particular person who maybe had some kind of, I'm not gonna say mental disorder, but had some kind of a Machiavellian sort of tendencies, who wanted to gain power within her community and saw a very easy way to do it. And by the way, women do this very commonly, where they want to gain power over other women because women are more hierarchical than men, actually, in a weird way.
Yeah.
She wanted to be the top alpha dog. She wanted to have power over other women. I think that's what happened here. Sorry, that's my my interpretation.
Yeah, I mean, I came to a slightly different conclusion. I mean, the points of her sort of like the attention seeking and whatnot, that I completely agree with you on that one. I mean, she clearly went overboard. I mean, Betty and Abigail were just, they were. They were pieces of work.
They were in a petty kind of interpersonal thing.
Yeah, but I saw Anne as more of a, not only could she sort of like wrap the town around her little finger with her with her displays of, oh my god, I'm so inflicted, but at the same time there was also the prospect of being able to sort of help the family out as well, do away with
because she gained in every way from this, every way.
She would actually later apologize. I think she'd write a
I don't give a fuck, by the way. Well, I know she did, but who cares?
And interestingly the village essentially forgave her, which
wow.
Well, 250 years later, I don't, and I see you. I see you, bitch.
Oh, by the way, soup visual in the chat. Wow, it's like Twitter.
Yeah, I was going to point that out.
It's very Twitter. Yes, this is 1600s Twitter is what's going on. 1700s Twitter is what's going on right here.
I mean, this ends up with people burning. At least Twitter. No one's dying from it, I guess.
Yeah,
not often, but sometimes, but not often.
All right, I knew that'd bite me, but.
No, Twitter's not burning people on the stake, although I guarantee people who use Twitter wish they had that option. It's like press F to throw the flame. Press F to throw it on the pyre. You can't do that, unfortunately, over the internet, but this is the same psychology. That's why this is fascinating. That's why we need to learn from this, because same stuff.
Where was I with this? I forgot. She was so basically she allowed Native Americans. No, it's all good. She allowed Native Americans in. Bad move, not allowed to do that. Naughty. We can't be doing that. And the Proctors were also rivals of a family called the Corey family. I say that we'll discuss in a separate part of the presentation, but pretty much we'll get to them soon. We're still around,
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, sorry, cool, just double checking. Excuse me. Mary Warren was a servant girl of the Proctors. She also accused Elizabeth Proctor, which was interesting. She saw an opportunity and went for it. She was an 18-year-old orphan who the Proctors had taken into care, but she would often tell others that the Proctors would abuse and mistreat her.
Yeah, you're getting into the story I actually know now. So now
really?
I'm like, ooh, yeah.
Sweet.
Okay.
So yeah, on the 12th of March, 1692, Mary testified that the spectre of Elizabeth's husband, John Proctor, would float around the house before resting on her lap. John, on the other hand, basically was like, "You're chatting rubbish," and he didn't actually really buy into the hysteria running amok in Salem at the time.
Chatty and rubbish is the best way of saying that. Sorry.
What was that? Sorry.
Right. Chatty and rubbish is the best way of saying that. Yeah.
You're chatting bullshit, mate. He was very outspoken, actually, in his belief that the afflicted girls were simply lying. I think he even said that what he thought they should be whipped and hanged for the trouble that they were causing. It might
yes,
have been
he
him,
did.
Yeah.
And I believe that was which is correct, because even people at the time realized what the fuck was happening.
Yeah.
But the social normative stuff, the mob mentality was still going to ramp up no matter what.
Exactly.
So even at the time, people involved with this understood this was nasty, wrong, and bullshit.
Yeah.
But it didn't prevent the mob mentality, which would happen soon after.
And interestingly, the more you pushed against it, the more likely you were to be accused of being a witch.
I have to say though,
of course, we have to protect women.
Exactly, yeah. We have to protect women by hanging them, basically, is what.
very
in the context of the Salem Witch Trials, that is not a view I personally express.
I was going to say, this John Proctor, he sounds like the original Thought Patroller.
Well,
I appreciate
I mean, check this Chad energy, right? He basically, when Mary was going around chatting all this rubbish,
John Proctor is a Chad, dude.
Yeah, when Mary was going around chatting all this bollocks about him and his wife, he was basically like, look, listen, right, you carry on. I'm going to beat the fucking foolishness out of you. Do you understand? Right? And she went, okay. And she went, okay. And I think the next day,
he should have beat the foolishness out of her. He didn't. That was the problem.
But yeah, I think it was the next day. She was like, actually, guys, I'm all right now. John was actually really, really awesome. He's actually a really awesome guy. She put like a note on a letter on the town church, on the village church doors, and was basically like, John's a fantastic guy. He's amazing. He's helped cure me of my afflictions. Everyone, let's pray and celebrate for John.
Women really just kind of needed an assertive male figure to actually beat I'm not saying physically, but beat the stupid shit out of them. Not necessarily physically, but mentally. To be like, fucking shut up. You're being catty and nasty and awful, and you're trying to kill your neighbors because you have petty disagreements with them. It's bullshit.
Yeah. In other words,
what all of these witch trials were. They were all about petty, tiny little disagreements. And today, all that we have on the internet is just exacerbated macrocosms of shit that happened in Salem. But yeah, it's very interesting.
So patrol.
We need more John Proctors. Come on now.
Basically, yeah. And maybe a Giles Corey or two, but we'll cover him in a bit.
Yeah.
Oyer and Terminer. How familiar are you with Oyer and Terminer?
Oh, I don't. I'm not familiar.
No, cool.
I know John Proctor, but no.
I'm not that familiar with the concept itself, but essentially, we sort of started talking about trials, but I didn't really talk about sort of like the method by which they were following. So.
Oh no, I'm not familiar with this. This is actually totally new stuff to me.
This is where Rory's family had direct influence over. It should be noted, obviously, because the Massachusetts Bay Charter was no longer in effect, they needed to set up something new in order to conduct the witch trials. And so what they did was they set up the Court of Oyer and Terminer, specifically to handle witchcraft cases. There was a man named William Stoughton who oversaw the cases. Now, these courts required little to no evidence to seal a conviction. Tituba,
and again, what was considered evidence at this point in time?
Okay,
was...
so you could
spurious at best.
Yeah,
spurious at best.
We'll talk. I'm pretty sure I covered the evidence side of things. Yeah, I think I did. But yeah, so there was like 3 key tenets to evidence. If it comes up again, I'll skip over it, but I'll just sort of go through it now. So you had the first thing was a confession. So if you confessed, that's okay, brilliant. You've just saved us a bunch of time. We'll probably chuck you in jail actually, rather than hang you, because funny enough, that was more likely going to be the case if you were just like, yeah, okay, fair enough. In fact, with Tituba,
well, no wonder so many women confess to be, and men confess to being witches.
So let's talk about the confessions. Tituba, so she most notably denied the accusations against her, but when the courts were unsatisfied with this, she just basically went, you know what, fine, I'm a witch. I'm going to tell you about other witches in the village, and I'll tell you about everything that I done. And she said that basically the devil had come to her demanding that she serve him.
Yes.
Ordering
smart
her
woman, by the way. She knew it was up. She knew it was up.
Yeah, absolutely. But do you know what? When I was researching this, right, and I because I sort of questioned it at first, and then when I sort of got the context behind it, I was like, mate, this woman knows what's going on. She knows what's up, you know, and yeah. So she basically went, devil told me to hurt Betty and Abigail. And she even claimed to be blinded by the devil as he was angry at her for telling the truth. So, you know, emphasizing on I'm telling so many truths I can't see. Ow. So yeah, the confession obviously was likely to save her own skin, and it worked. But it had the adverse effect as well of convincing the wider community to essentially press ahead with the trials. It probably would have happened anyway, let's be honest. But the fact that they got a guilty verdict and she was so convincing in, again, put yourself in their shoes in that time, she was so convincing with what she was telling the courts that essentially they were like, this is actually
you always have to put yourself in Tituba's position.
Yeah, exactly.
She's a Native American woman,
yeah,
I believe, correct? Or she Native American, or she Black African? I don't remember.
Yeah, so I think she was black, but I'm not too sure if she was African or she was from. She might have been like Caribbean.
I think she might have been mixed or Caribbean. Possibly, I think that was accurate. Is Caribbean, and of course you're going to be like, excuse me, of course I'm going to, if you're going to offer me a position where I can get out of it, then I'm going to say yes. I'm going to absolutely snitch on everyone else around me, even though snitching, I'm not really snitching. I'm just snitching to get myself out of it. So you can't paint Tituba as a complete vile character, which I've seen happen in a lot of retellings of the story. They're like, Tituba she's the real witch, and it's like, well, hang on.
But again, I think it's coming from the context of like, why is she saying that she's guilty? Why is she giving them everything they want? It's like, put yourself in her shoes. What would you do? What would you do?
Yeah, you know, put yourself in her shoes.
I mean, the fact, exactly. The fact that she was even put in that position was ridiculous to begin with. I mean, it was self-preservation.
She's already in a society where she is a 5th-class citizen.
Yeah,
she is so far. She is not treated equally in any way.
Yeah, I mean,
so of course she's going to say that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
it kept her alive. Whenever they needed information, they would go to Tituba because, you know, she was, unlike Brian Stelter, a reliable source.
No one trusts the thumb.
Oh, Harry, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Good. Okay, just making sure.
I'm learning. I'm learning.
Sure. Cool.
Sorry.
That's all right. I'm just saying, because it's so very, very quiet. I always think like the line's cut out or something. Abigail. I put this in here as well. Abigail Williams actually claimed, again, this again further heightened the tensions within the town, and I put this in here. But she actually claimed to have witnessed a large gathering of witches, allegedly 40 of them in a forest in the dark of night.
Right.
So
when the whole town is what, like 300 people?
About that. I think it might have been a couple of thousand.
It might have been a couple of thousand, but that comparatively, statistically, that's an enormous amount of the population.
Here we go.
If it's 40 people.
I did do proper research. Yay. It was So the evidence. So I mentioned confessions being one of them, and Tituba was a big example of that. Other evidence that could be accepted during the Oyer Court of Oyer and Terminer, testimony of at least 2 individuals of witnessing witchcraft, which wasn't a problem because you had Betty, you had Abigail, you had Annie Putnam, you had Mary Warren, and you probably other girls as well. playing up to their roles. The other piece of evidence that you could use was spectral evidence, which was basically anything that a witness claimed to see or feel, which was of a supernatural nature. So, Haryan, if you were afflicted and you were saying that Aydin Paladin is dancing around you, smacking you in the face, and
no,
hang on, I am doing that.
This?
But you are doing it. But she's also.
Why are you giving it away?
Sorry, yeah, come on. Ow.
Sorry.
I thought you'd liked it. Come on now, dude.
Haryan, why are you glossing? But
God.
but yeah, but
my webcam on. Is that how you saw all
that? But yeah, at the same time, she's sitting halfway across the room, just innocently watching by. Yeah, you can use that. Or if you dreamt about Haryan, Aydin, if you dreamt about Haryan riding in on horseback, to say, I don't know, #Real Queen, then riding off into the sunset. Then you can use
I don't know, if
well.
someone comes in and exclaims they're going to reclaim the monarchy, I don't think that would upset me. That made me really happy, but whatever. Like,
well,
whatever.
White magic. It's all for good.
Yeah.
Right. White magic.
Yeah. But the thing about spectral evidence, though, is that it wasn't usually accepted on its own, so it had to have either a confessional testimony backing it up, which again, not a problem because you've got a bunch of girls playing soap operas. There was also causal evidence, which could also be used. So they would actually look at past behaviours of the people within the village, and they would use that against them. Wonder what that sounds like. We're thinking tweet mining, that sort of stuff. And also,
archaeology.
Yeah, that's the one. Accused witches would also be stripped down and checked for marks or bites from their familiars. So if they're wolves, hamsters, or rabbits named Sugar, got a bit too feisty, then you'd find it there. Giles and Martha Corey. So So we thought John Proctor was a Chad. Giles Corey. He was born in Northampton.
Here we go, dude.
He was born in Northampton in England, August 1611. So it's unclear as to when he was actually born exactly, but it was around. They believe it was around about August 1611. Not much is known about his childhood, but records show that he was living in Salem in the 1640s. He was married 3 times and had 5 children from 2 of his marriages. Margaret, the first wife, would give him 4 daughters: Martha, Margaret, Deliverance, and Elizabeth. Mary Bright would be his second wife, and they would marry on the 11th of April 1664, and they would have 1 child together, a boy named John. Giles was a prosperous land-owning farmer, but he had somewhat of a bad reputation. So, and a bit of a temper. So in 1676, he allegedly caught an indentured farm worker, Jacob Goodale, stealing apples from Corey's brother-in-law. So basically, what Giles decided to do was that he decided to beat him to death with a stick.
By the way, I will point out that wasn't totally abnormal.
No.
In the 1600s.
No. And in fact, it was corporal punishment was permitted against indentured servants.
Yeah.
So now he was tried and he was found guilty of killing Jacob, but as I said, as it was okay to essentially beat your indentured servants to death, he was only fined. He wasn't actually charged with killing him. He wasn't actually charged with murder. It was something along the lines of like negligent death or something like that.
Yeah, you abused your property essentially, I mean, it's bullshit. Like, come on, it's ridiculous, but that's how that was back in the day. You got too mad at your property, you could beat it to death. Not a good idea.
You threw your PS4
as a property owner.
Yeah, you threw your PS4 controller at the wall. Therefore, pay a fine.
I would say, just an aside, you paid a lot of money for this shit. So to destroy it, aka a person, which I hate having to refer to it in that kind of way.
Yeah,
not a good idea.
No.
So this is a very stupid thing to do. But whatever. Yeah. Clearly mentally unhinged, but not illegal technically. Yeah, exactly. Kind of illegal. Whatever.
Yeah, it was kind of illegal, but rather than face jail time, you would just get a slap on the wrist and you had to pay a few shillings or something. Now Mary, his wife, died in 1684, and 6 years later he would actually marry Martha Rich, who would obviously later become Martha Corey. Now at this time he was around about 80 years old. And Giles was a bit of a funny figure because he was a member of the Halfway Covenant in Salem's Towns Church, but would also attend church at the village, which would anger several members of the congregation, Samuel Parris especially. So basically, he found like a loophole. I didn't look too much into detail. All I know is that it was a loophole, which basically meant that he could basically and to become a member of the church through the Halfway Covenant, but also was still able to attend church in Salem Village, so he didn't have to travel all the way to town. So it basically was a win-win for him. But yeah, Samuel, who was extremely against the Halfway Covenant, would be pretty pissed off every Sunday when he had to look down and see that man sitting there, knowing as well that he'd also killed a man as well. Not very Puritan of you. He was considered to be by many as to be an unsociable and grumpy character with a violent temper. He was also angered that the proctors that I mentioned about earlier. He was also hacked off at the fact that they would allow Native Americans into the tavern, so much so that he would actually take them to court and lose that court battle. And it was said that he was so hacked off at losing that he allegedly tried to burn down the proctor's house as a result.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know, right? Now, Martha, on the other hand, she was considered a social climber, and it was believed that she only married Giles because of his old age, 1 foot in the grave, and the fact that he was quite, well off. So, she wouldn't have to wait long until she inherited his wealth. They talked about him being like a gold digger and whatnot, but to be honest, like I think she had her own sort of money anyway from like previous relationships, and not much, but enough. And there wasn't that much of an age difference between them. It was like 9-10 years age difference, so it wasn't like she would have much longer either.
A bigger difference now than it would have been 300, 400 years ago, right?
Again, yeah, I suppose that's true. I mean, the fact that he was 80 years old in the 1690s is pretty unheard of.
Yeah,
I mean, life expectancy then.
It's quite weird, but
Yeah. So Martha also had a bit of a checkered past as well. She actually gave birth to an illegitimate son named Benoni, who was believed to be mixed race. Again, a bit of a no-no in those days. And in 1864, she married a man called Henry Rich, and together they had one son called Thomas Rich. And after Henry died, she married Giles. Benoni actually lived with them as well. And obviously because Benoni looked quite distinctively different to Giles and Martha, that obviously got people talking. Martha was quite skeptical of the Salem Witch Trials. She was like Tituba. She had her head screwed on. She was coming at this quite logically. She didn't really believe what was going on. She didn't believe the girls, and she didn't want really any sort of. She didn't want to get involved in it. She didn't want to be dragged into it. She was quite worried about sort of like the direction that the village was going. Giles, on the other hand, though, was firmly on side with it. He believed. He believed that there was a sort of a witch pandemic, if you will. And
it's very interesting you said that though about Tituba. Sorry, really quick aside, because I've heard many people who have retold this story and blame Tituba for everything.
No, I
agree with you, by the way. But
no, absolutely, yeah, I completely disagree with that. She. Again, as I say, it's like, what would you do in her shoes? That's what I do. I mean, I personally, I look at the Putnams, I look at the girls as more catalysts for this whole thing, because they could have stopped at any time. They could have stopped at any time, and they didn't.
They particularly they intentionally chose not to. It's very. I really like this discussion though, because I have heard too many people just say Tituba was the real reason why all this shit happened. I don't think that's correct at all.
No.
Sorry, not to.
I mean, no, not
drive off the point too far.
No, it's really interesting. In fact, one of the people that because I watched what's her name? Oh my god, I've forgotten her name. My wife's gonna kill me. My wife's gonna kill me.
If you look at like YouTube videos of the Salem Witch Trials, I would say you'll find a lot of people who say Tituba really was a witch, and she was the one who was like actually like confusing these girls. And that was not. I don't think that's accurate at all. And I think people who consider themselves to be quite progressive or whatever, still have this perspective of Tituba as being this outside. This outside interjection into the society that was teaching them witchcraft, which first of all doesn't exist, but secondly,
that's what a witch would say.
Well, I guess as a pagan I shouldn't speak, but that was like a very weird thing about like blaming all on Tituba, and I'm very happy that. To see Tituba not being blamed here because I don't think it was her fucking fault, you know.
there is no bus that we are going to push her under. Don't you worry about that.
Thank you.
Stephanie Harlow was the name of the person that I was thinking of. She done a really good video. Covering it's actually where I got quite a bit of the information on. I must admit. She didn't really blame Tituba either. In fact, she pointed the finger at Samuel Parris for a lot of the stuff that went on. But even then, I was a bit like, I mean, I can understand it because there's motive there, but
it's no one person. That's the issue. It's no one person you can put this on. It's the conglomerate of people.
Yeah,
but I find it weird that so many people want to put it on Tituba as actually being a witch when no,
yeah, exactly. I'm just like. No, I mean, I can sort of see it because I think it, like I say, if you accept that if she just pleaded her innocence and ended it there, then I think that the logic is that it would probably have ended there and a lot of lives would have been saved. But I don't think that's what the girls were planning on doing. I think they wanted
they wanted to hurt other people in their community because they had little grudges against them. Tituba is a scapegoat that they used. That would be my perspective on it, but whatever. Sorry, we'll get into it more, I suppose.
No, it's cool. So anyway, Giles wanted to observe the trials, and he wanted to take part, not participate, but he wanted to observe, see what was going on, and just keep up to date. Again, they would actually argue about this. Martha one time would be seen arguing with him. I think she actually threw his saddle off the horse and threw it into the mud and was like, "You're not going." And he was like, "Shut up, woman. Go inside and make me a sandwich. I'll be back before dusk."
Nice.
Yeah.
That's how you should treat women.
Well, if she's not making you a sandwich, why is she there?
But
get rid of it. Yeah.
But Martha naturally, because of what was going on, she was naturally concerned. Not only did her and Giles have a bit of a rocky reputation within the village, but she recognised that because of that could easily lead them to be accused of being witches, either her or Giles. But the thing about Martha, though, even though she had a bit of a reputation, she was actually considered. She was actually a fully fledged member of the Puritan church in Salem Village, and she was considered to be a very pious and very God-fearing woman, and it just didn't sort of you wouldn't point the finger at her because the point of Puritanism as well. One of the things is they believe that women are in terms of how do I put this? Basically, in terms of susceptibility to temptation, women were weaker, and so they had to basically pray and worship twice as hard.
Eve was the one who was tempted. Eve is the one who was tempted by Satan. So Eve, and therefore all women, as the children of Eve, are all susceptible to temptation more than men are. That is why they were afraid of witches. They did believe that male witches existed, but women were particularly tempted into Satan because of the same way that Eve was tempted into Satan.
Yeah. I've always found that interesting. Actually, I found that particular part of the research quite interesting just because when you hear about witches and you hear about the sort of like the gender balance in terms of like, you know, who got the noose more than who, it's never really, I've never really heard it sort of explained deeply. It was only until I actually sort of was looking up the Puritanism side of it, and they mentioned about the women essentially being more susceptible because of, like you say, Eve. That's when it sort of like began to make sense to me a little bit. Like, well, naturally they would think more women were witches because they would believe that they were more susceptible to it. And if it was just we hate women kind of movement, then why were men getting them? You know, why were men getting strung up or burnt or whatnot?
It wasn't entirely that. It wasn't an entirely gender-specific movement or belief. It was that women are susceptible to it over men because women are the progeny of Eve, and if you want to believe the Lilith kind of belief system as well, then women have this, according to this belief system, women have this inherent predisposition to being traitors and to being tricked by the devil. Right? That's why it's like women make deals with the devil to become witches, to sign their name in the book and do this stuff. That kind of thing is very, very old. It's a very old belief.
Yeah.
And but it doesn't preclude men from doing it as well. Men could be witches just as well as women could be, just that women are maybe more prone towards it. And I think even during the Salem trials, they believed that men could be witches as well. It's just that women were more prone towards it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you know, as you'll see, there were men, like you mentioned, there were men who were accused and hanged for witchcraft. It wasn't something that. Yeah, I mean, I think it just basically, to me, it's just when it's explained like just in general. I feel like that particular explanation, that bit of context is missing. That would lead people to think, okay, well, it's not just sort of sexist misogyny and stuff like that.
It wasn't misogyny. It's a perception. They do think men can be witches, and they did hang and burn men as witches.
Because the standards were the same. I mean, in fact, the Puritans would say that that all people, men and women were equal under the eyes of God, but just in terms of the flesh, no. That was basically their perception. It was like there was no two ways about it. You know, when it comes to God, he'll judge me in exactly the same way as he'll judge you. But while we're here now, you've got to be extra careful because you're more susceptible.
Yeah, I think it's the susceptibility part. Yeah. Women are more susceptible to being witches, but men can be witches as well.
I mean, you could argue, that does sound sexist and whatnot, but I think, again, I think that could just be, when you look at the physical traits of men and women.
Well, it doesn't even be like we don't have to be complicated about it. It's just that women are just in terms of what the people in the 1600s believed. Yeah. They believed, yes, they were looking at woman as the Adam and Eve stereotype and saying, well, Eve was tempted by the apple, and so therefore Eve, that aka women, are more easily tempted by the devil to become part of his harem, to become a witch. But men can too, as Adam was. Adam was also tempted.
Yeah.
So you got to understand, like, that's how they perceived it.
By the way, yeah. in Genesis, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I think in Monday terms, we'd probably just say women are generally more agreeable than men. But obviously,
in some ways.
Sorry, has Jordan Peterson entered the chat or something? I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
I could enter the chat and talk about how women are not agreeable, but whatever.
Wow, true, yeah.
As a woman. However, I would say that I think that's where that comes from, is the idea that women give in. So women are more susceptible to the devil, and that's why they have to be protected. That's also like part of a lot of historical kind of why we force women, why these historical cultures force women into modesty, because women are very susceptible to the devil. So we have to like protect them. But in terms of this witch culture stuff, it's like, well, yeah, women are more susceptible, but absolutely men can be witches as well.
Yeah,
and that is kind of the fear there, is that anyone can become a witch, but women are a little bit more easily coaxed into Satan's wheelhouse.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of witches and whatnot, obviously, because that's the whole topic of this stream. I've sort of, as I was researching this, I jumped the gun a little bit. So just to sort of add a little bit of context. So Martha was accused of being a witch. Let's, spoiler alert. So how it happened is one Sunday, while listening to a sermon from a guest minister, Deoday Lawson, who was actually the previous minister before Samuel Parris, but for whatever reason he left. Sort of similar sort of issues that Samuel was experiencing from the Porters at the time. Long story, not enough time. Needless to say, he was there giving a sermon as a guest. Abigail Williams, Betty Parris, they began to do their usual act, convulsing on the floor, screaming out in agony. Abigail would point up to the roof, like in the air, and claim that Martha Corrie was flying around when Martha was actually there in the room, just, there with the rest of them. And Mary was like, what? No, I wasn't. No, that wasn't me. And
women being bitchy at each other once again.
And
sorry, that is my contention about this whole thing.
That's cool. And
we'll get into the end.
So she protested their innocence and was like, nah, you're again chatting rubbish, and they arrested her. Martha and put her on trial. Martha told the judges not to believe the girls, stating that they had no proof of any witchcraft. But as we know, Oyer and Terminer, you don't need that much. But as she was protesting her innocence in trial, the girls began mimicking her movements, and they told the court that Martha was forcing them to do this. And the girls sort of like acting like sort of human puppets at this stage, or marionettes, were Abigail, Betty, and then they were also joined by Annie Putnam and another girl called Mercy Lewis, who also joined in the theatrics. Mercy would even claim a shadowy figure. Sometimes they say a tall white figure, but
Mercy is one of the biggest bitches in this story. But go ahead.
Yeah, she would claim a shadowy figure was behind her, whispering in her ear, telling her exactly what to say. John Hawthorne, which was one of the judges at the Martha Corrie trial, would actually ask Mercy if it was Satan. But then Annie Putnam would cry out screaming, saying that she could see a yellow bird sucking on Martha's hand. This bird was allegedly Martha Corrie's familiar, and they also claimed that Martha had been tormenting the girls for weeks, trying to get them to sign the Devil's Book. I think she was coming to them in their dreams. Yeah, I know, right? So theatrics and accusations. We talked a lot about theatrics. So by now, many of the people from outside of Salem had travelled to the village to witness the trials, and as a result, the accusations grew and the claims became even more sensational. It got to a point where there were so many people coming into the village to attend and observe the trials that they actually had to move the trials from the village into the town. On the first day of the Salem town trials, John Indian, Samuel Parris's other slave, would also accuse Elizabeth Proctor of trying to force him to sign the Devil's Book, prompting John Proctor to stand up, basically saying, "What's that?"
Someone who was basically a slave at the time, by the way, let's be clear.
Yeah, so John Indian, slave, accusing Elizabeth Proctor, quite a well-off woman. John Proctor gets up and basically repeats these threats that he did to Mary, was like, "Shut up, you bastard, or I'll beat the devil out. You're talking about sign a Devil's Book? I'll beat the devil out of you."
Nice.
But he didn't.
Did it work?
No, not quite. Elizabeth Proctor, though, would tell John Indian that, what he was doing was bad because, he wasn't just lying to the people, but he was also lying to God. But as she was trying to sort of expand on this,
and if we have to get anything out of this story in the longitudinal aspect, he did lie. They did lie to God, and that's who you have to ultimately face. You did lie to God,
which is
deal with that.
Yeah, which is the ultimate irony of all this. But yeah, although as she was trying to expand on the "you're lying to God" thing, the girls began to accuse John of attacking them. Again, not physically, as he was just standing there, but as the spectre of John. He was dragged out into sort of like the halls, and was told to explain himself, and he basically just scoffed at them and was like, "This is bullshit." But he and his wife, but he was found guilty of witchcraft, and I believe Elizabeth Proctor was as well, but she would actually later be pardoned. Oh, hang on a minute, why is that not working? There we go. So yeah, the Proctors, as I say, they were arrested and taken into jail. Mary Warren, interestingly, would be accused of witchcraft. So remember Mary? She was the one who tried to accuse Elizabeth and John, and then John was like, "Shut up, or I'll beat the shit out of you," and she did. But what happened was when she basically was like, "Oh my God, I've been cured," the village, the sort of the town residents became suspicious as to, okay, well, how are you okay now? But yeah, we've got Abigail, Betty, Mercy, and all the other girls all still writhing around, spurging out on the floor, you know, doing the limbo and conga and simultaneously. So yeah, they basically went.
The devil conveniently let loose of you.
Yeah,
I guess.
Basically, yeah. So yeah, again, she sort of went back to accusing the Proctors again, basically saying, "Yeah, I'm guilty, but you know, it wasn't. I didn't want to do it. The Proctors forced me to sign the Devil's Book again, to, you know, in an effort to save her skin." But then Abigail and Annie again began accusing Mary of sitting next to Elizabeth Proctor, trying to force them to sign the Devil's Book again. The Devil's Book comes up quite a lot. You know, it's almost like a needy fan, you know, sign my book, please.
Well, if people don't know, the whole idea of the Devil's Book is that, which is basically like they have to sign this to sign their life over, and usually their virginity over the devil.
Yeah.
So, that was the idea of this, is that they had signed this in secret, but it wasn't like the way we would probably perceive of it today, of being a metaphysical kind of thing.
Yeah.
They perceived at the time that this was, they literally went to hell and signed the Devil's Book and said, "Yes, I am a witch. I sign my soul over to you, Satan." This was a very weird perspective. But yeah, they believe they literally signed their name in the Devil's Book to not to become immortal, which is part of it, to become immortal witches, and that would be kind of the perspective.
Yeah. So Mary eventually confessed and basically spilled the beans and shopped a load of other women as well. Many more accusations were and arrests were made. Now, interestingly about Mary, she would actually later speak about lying about what she said, and she would actually recant her statements and her confessions. But interestingly, the courts ignored these. So, yeah, make of that what you will. Rebecca Nurse, the Alabastard, in the chat mentioned that you were, it was Rebecca, wasn't it? Related. She was another woman who was accused, and she was considered a pillar of her community. So we talk about pious women. Rebecca Nurse was right up there. So she was 71 years old, and she was even described by some as saint-like. I mean, she was that deeply committed to the religion. She had long endured legal battles against the Putnams over land ownership. Annie Putnam and Abigail accused Rebecca of witchcraft, but the town, with this particular accusation, the town weren't too sure about this one, because Rebecca's faith was that strong. It actually almost broke the spell that was over this town at the time.
Guess what? Rebecca's are always faithful.
Yes. But
sorry, that's my name. Sorry.
Oh, okay. But Samuel Parris would tell the people that anyone could be tricked into becoming a witch, even as someone as pious as Rebecca Nurse. Interesting title for this one, and you'll see why in a bit. So investigators, because even though the trials and the it was all rubbish and dodgy and whatnot, they were still essentially treating these like criminal investigations. And so about a week before Martha, they paid a visit to Martha. They visited Annie Putnam to basically inquire as to what she was wearing, what Martha was wearing at the time that her spectre was present around Annie. But Annie would basically go, she blinded me at the time, so I couldn't see what she was wearing. Again, the town being the town, rumours spread, and Giles would eventually catch wind that the investigators were going to go to Martha to find out, to ask her basically what she was wearing on the day. And so naturally, Giles went back and told Martha, they're going to visit you, they're going to ask you these questions. And so when they did arrive, She opened the door. They were there, and she went, I know why you're here. You're here to ask me what I was wearing on the day that I was apparently floating around Annie's room. The investigators, Edward Putnam and Ezekiel Cheever, were shocked. And rather than, putting 2 + 2 together and coming up with 4, they came up with 4,000 and believed that instead that she had read her minds. Their minds, confirming this was the proof that they needed that she was indeed a witch. There we go. Investigation done. There you go. Got him. Now, get this. Amazingly, Giles Corey himself testified against Martha, claiming to have seen her praying without speaking the words. And there was a time when he tried to pray, but he couldn't get the words out. And he believed that it was Martha who was basically forcing those words to stay inside of him. But a few weeks later, Giles himself would be... Yeah, I know, right? But I
haven't heard this part of the story. This is very interesting.
Right. So, but he's again, he was firmly believed, my wife's a witch and whatnot. But then after a few weeks, you can't have it all your own way. He'd get arrested himself. Guess what? He was accused of being a witch.
Shock!
Oh my God.
Shock!
I know, right?
How could this have happened?
I know.
The incentives weren't pointing this way at all.
Now, for absolutely no reason at all, he refused to speak. He basically all the opinions that he'd formed about witches and witch trials had magically disappeared. I couldn't tell you why. No, I can't put my finger on it. But and
it's confusing. I'm super confused.
and he refused, and he also refused to repeat his testimony against his wife. He now believed that she wasn't a witch, but
convenient. Excuse me. I don't know, but he's a witch. Do you see how this is all like the audience, like how this all works together, right?
But now, interestingly, as I mentioned, obviously, you would enter a plea guilty or not guilty. Giles, on the other hand, chose to stand mute. Now, what happens if an individual stands mute at the time? Then technically, now Giles knew this as well. If he stood mute, he couldn't face trial.
Mm-hmm.
So now there were a couple of reasons to do this. One of the reasons was, of course, he was good with loopholes, so he thought, I'll use this loophole and I'll get out of a trial, and okay, I'll probably spend my life in jail, but at least I'm not going to get hanged. The other reason was because no matter what plea he entered, whether it was innocent or guilty, he knew that his land and wealth would be distributed among the town. That would tend to be happening. So the children wouldn't get anything. It would likely, if anything, land up in the pockets of the Putnams. He didn't want that, so he stum. Now, again, Massachusetts Bay Charter out the window. Investigators, the magistrates, they had no clue what to do. They were like, okay, we've got a guy here. We can't put him on trial, but at the same time, we need to sort of press ahead. And so they did a bit of research and found out that in English law, if an individual refused to enter a plea, they could receive hard and forceful punishment into giving one. So torture.
Well, why do you think people were interested in trying to make others witches? Because they wanted maybe some of their wealth or land or whatever was all starting to come together now, isn't it?
We're seeing a pattern emerge and a motive emerge, aren't we? So we need him to talk. Because he was already in like legal disputes, and there was all sorts of disputes going on. So Martha would actually be found guilty of witchcraft on the 8th of September 1692. She was sentenced to death by hanging. However, Giles, on the other hand, so what happened with him? On the 17th of September 1692, he was taken to an open field. I think he was stripped naked. Some sources say some say that some leave that bit out, but he was placed face up on the ground, and then he had large stone weights placed on top of him. Now, Sheriff George Corwin was the one overseeing this torture, for want of a better word. Every time a large stone was placed on top of him, he would ask him to enter a plea, to which Giles would always reply, more weight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And obviously this would go on for several hours. This is Murgut pressing. This is so essentially it was pressing. This would go on for several hours each time a new weight would get put on. He'd be asked more weight. You know, he'd absolutely not having it. A witness that was there, Robert Califf, wrote that the weight on Giles's body became so severe that his tongue actually pressed out of his mouth, and that the sheriff would have to force it back in, ask the question, and then demand that more weight be applied. Eventually he would die from pressing on the, again, some say the 18th, others say the 19th. In fact, on his gravestone it actually has his death date as the 19th of September, so let's go with that. 19th of September 1692 he would actually be pressed to death. 3 days later his wife Martha was hanged.
Oh,
but the children, see, what's interesting about this, he is classed as, a lot of people would say, oh, he was executed as being a witch, but he wasn't, because he didn't confess, he didn't enter a plea. He was killed for getting a plea, in my mind. But because of what he did, though, his children got to they got to retain the property. You know, it wasn't distributed out amongst the people. So the Coreys' wealth and land was basically retained within the family. So proper Chad energy there from our man Giles. So let's talk about the body count. In total, 19 people were hanged in Salem during the witch trials, with Giles Corey being the exception, as he was pressed to death. Bridget Bishop, I didn't talk about Bridget, but she was the first to be executed on the 10th of June 1692. Now the trials actually stopped for 30 days because there was no Massachusetts Bay Charter. They weren't sure whether what they were doing was right from a legal / religious standpoint, so they had to go away and research that. What you're seeing in front of you now is a list of the people that were actually executed and the dates that I've found. So you had Bridget Bishop, who was executed on the 10th of June. Elizabeth Howe was a woman who was executed on the 13th of July. Then you had 3 women, Rebecca Nurse, Sarah Wilds, Susanna Martin, were executed on the 19th of July. Then Sarah Good. Now, Sarah Good, she was pregnant at the time. Interestingly with her, she was allowed to basically stay alive. She gave birth while in prison, and she was executed, on the 29th of July, just about, I think, like a few days after her child was born. Her child's name was Mercy, and sadly Mercy also died, but that was a few, that was while she was, so she died while she was in prison. Essentially, she died in jail a few days after she was born, so she didn't survive, unfortunately. John Proctor, Mr. I'll beat the devil out of you, he was hanged on August the 19th, along with John Willard. George Burroughs is actually quite a sad execution in particular with him. Remember the Anne Goody case in Boston? I can't remember the name exactly. I've got to go back. Where she was made to recite the Lord's Prayer. Now, George Burroughs was like a priest / sort of minister, and while he had the noose around his neck, he recited the Lord's Prayer, word perfect, which again, believe a witch couldn't do. Some say that,
why wouldn't you, by the way, to prove you weren't a witch?
Well,
that was one of the main things.
So some sources say that they just ignored it and dropped him down. Other sources say that instead of him saying hallowed be thy name, he said hollowed be thy name.
Oof.
Yeah. Oh, you can't say hallowed? Bungee. George Jacob Sr., he was August 19th. Martha Carrier, August 19th. Giles Corey, of course, September 19th. With the bulk of executions coming on the September the 22nd. Martha Corey, Mary Eastley, a woman called Wilmot Red, Mary Parker, Margaret Scott, Alice Parker, Samuel Wardell Sr., Alan Prudator, apparently were all executed on the 22nd of September, 1692. As you can see, there's quite a lot of names in there. So if I was to go through each and every one of their backgrounds, we would be here for days.
Well, it's kind of impossible, but it proves though the monumentous Rolling Stone-esque nature of these kinds of accusations. They compound as they go on.
Yeah.
The more this continues, the more it's not just with the Salem Witch Trials. It is a current psychological phenomenon.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to be very aware of these kind of things.
Yeah. Anne Foster and Sarah Osborne. Sarah Osborne, if you remember, she was one of the first women to be accused of witchcraft. They would die in prison. As I mentioned, Sarah Good, who was pregnant at the time, was allowed to give birth to her daughter Mercy before she was executed, but the baby would die soon after. Tituba would avoid the executioner's noose, instead being imprisoned, and as I say, she was later freed, I think after a year or so, after Samuel Parris basically paid for the fees to get her released or whatnot. And interestingly as well, 2 dogs were also executed after being accused of being witches. Presumably they threw up the witch cakes. I don't know.
Yeah. Who knows?
So this is probably the bit that Aydin wants to get to.
Or the dogs could have been familiars or whatever.
No. They were outright accused of being witches.
Witches. The dogs were witches. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Already.
Not familiars. So okay. Aydin, tell us, how did this happen? I've put a few things up on here.
Okay.
So there's mass hysteria, a conspiracy to remove enemies, boredom, ergo poisoning.
Boredom is a big one of them. I think more than anything, actually, boredom probably is the correct example, the correct answer. However, there's a very simple social psychological example or explanation, which is that everyone engages in social psychology all the time, particularly social identity theory. So social identity theory is this thing that, for whatever reason, people have objections to because it makes them upset, and I'm sorry about that, but like I don't even know where I would start to say, like, where you would start to read this kind of stuff. I mean, Hogg and Haslam and Turner and Tajfel, and I don't know where I would say to start to read, and Oakes. I don't know where I would start to say that you read social identity theory, because it's been going on since the 1960s in terms of our study of this field. But what social identity says, essentially, as a theory, which is it is a broad theory, it's a general way of understanding society, is that people have in-groups and out-groups, right?
Yeah.
So we are very positive towards people who are within our in-group and very negative towards people who are within our out-group. And what we find with, like, I think the Salem Witch Trials is a classic social identity dilemma. We find that there are people who were within the society who viewed themselves as socially similar, and people who viewed themselves and viewed others as socially dissimilar. And the way that they wanted to get rid of the people that they viewed as socially dissimilar, in this case, was to kill them. That's horrible, but it's not atypical of human society. We still do this. It's political now, mostly. It's mostly political social identity. And so part of social identity is like optimal group distinctiveness is a part of it, right? Of making sure that I am optimally distinct from the other person who I disassociate myself with. And that's what you find with so many of these people, because they're all Puritans, right? They're all Puritans within the same society, but they want to make themselves optimally distinct. How do you make yourself optimally distinct? Well, you define the other person as a witch. That's how you do it. That's how you make yourself optimally distinct from someone who you dislike. You say that they are not actually a part of our social group or our social identity. They need to be ostracized and excluded from the group because they are not part of the group. They are distinct. Optimally distinct means I got a little bit of differences. I'm not perfect, but I'm optimally distinct. I'm just a little bit different. That person, they're outside of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is why we always call it Twitter witch hunts, isn't it? They get accused of being some sort of phobic or bigoted or whatever. So
yeah, that's a definite part of it.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Haryan, that's a definite part of it. They want to put labels on people because labels are an inherent part of social identity. labels are probably the most clear part of social identity theory that we can that we can measure. Labeling of saying I am this group or I am that group, and what the Salem witch trials were a very intergroup psychological problem, wherein these women, they were predominantly women, as we saw over the long course of this analysis, which is true, women getting mad at other women who were not fitting in quite enough with their social identity, or women who they had issues with personally, and then using group identity in order to get those women to be killed, because that's what happened. They said these were other women who saw women within their own group who they believed did not, who they had some kind of issue with, and they used group identity in order to kill them, to get them killed, essentially.
I mean, with some again, like you'd have to look at the entire stories and backgrounds of each and every victim to build a bigger picture. But I mean, with people like Sarah Good, for example, there's definitely a case to be made there, because she was very much an outcast anyway. I mean, the Puritans in the village decided that she couldn't have possibly been a good Puritan, because there was no way that God would have allowed her to be in the position that she is, with, you know, a young child and one on the way, homeless, desolate on the streets. You know, she must be a bad Puritan. You know, so, you know, cleaning.
But that precisely is group identity. That's precisely group identity.
So in that case, you can obviously make a case there. But then when you look at someone like Rebecca Nurse, for example, who was pretty much the polar opposite of Sarah Good, who was, for all intents and purposes, probably one of, if not the most loyal Puritan in the village.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, really. I know it sounds nonsensical, but the way that group psychology works is that they will find, so group psychology always works on the existence of the other. If they can't find an easy other, they will create one. They will create a Satan. They will create an opposition towards the group. This is a problem with any kind of social collective. It always happens. It's unfortunate, but this is the way that social psychology works. They will create, if an other does not exist, they will create one, and often they will create one within their own group. And in fact, this happens very quickly in, the de-individuated psychology that we look into, social identity model of de-individuation effects. We find that people form microcosmic groups almost instantaneously when we study this in a model of looking at people who are interacting anonymously, and we can like put them into like a really cool like little model and study how they interact quickly, and how they will form their own groups instantaneously based on nothing. And when you look at like actual historical examples, it's the same stuff where people actually do have reasons for why they form these groups. And the reason why they would want to ostracize somebody is because they need someone to ostracize to form as the out group. You need an out group to establish what the in group is. As long as there's an in group, that's fine. That's cool. But you need that out group. You need the witch. You need the evil.
It's like you can't have good without evil. Because without evil, how do you know what's good?
Exactly. But that's how it's not just how primitive societies view this stuff. It's how modern societies view this stuff. It's how everyone does. We're basically animals, right? So it's funny how people think we're so advanced and we're so far above this stuff. No. We're very tribalistic. We are.
Yeah.
It's an inherent part of human nature. So of course we apply very tribalistic nature towards a current human society, and this would have been the case also 300 years ago, 400 years ago. What happened there is people needed an evil. They needed a great Satan, so they created evil within their own societies to use as a scapegoat, first and foremost for their own issues in society. Because, trust me, there was infidelity in these societies. It absolutely existed. There was all kinds of what the Protestants would have considered evil. and non-Christian activities going on, because that will always happen. But the way that you take those issues and you externalize them onto a single person, then you can burn that person at the stake. You can persecute that person, and then your sins are sort of absolved because you can put them on an external person who is outside of the society. And when you look at the people who are burned as witches throughout history, they're always mild outsiders. They're always not in-group members. That's what makes them susceptible to that stuff, and it's why they get killed.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. It really does. Because you again from my layman's approach looking at it, I instantly went to the families in terms of the in-groups. You had your Putnams and your Porters and your Proctors, and they're all sort of pitting against each other. But the Putnams definitely had the upper hand in this, because they were the ones who recruited Samuel Parris in, so they were already on side with him, so they could I wouldn't be surprised if there was some sort of conspiratorial conversation going on behind the scenes between
absolutely
the Parris, and they had the power because of the Putnams being the second richest family, so they had financial clout. They also had the church on their side, and so they had the power and influence to manipulate the situation. And then like you say, and then you had the girls who were
the girls.
I think
that's a different thing.
So this is how I agree, because the way I saw it was the girls. When you look at the list there, I look at boredom being the girls, and then I think from that bore the conspiracy to remove enemies. So the Putnams, the Parrises used the girls' boredom and rode with it to basically achieve their own ends.
Well, I think. I actually think you're being a little bit nice. I think that boredom was part of the reason why the girls were doing what they were doing, but to say it was only boredom is quite nice. It's a nice perspective.
Yeah,
I think they were also influenced by the same social identity that influenced their parents. They knew that at the time they wanted to influence or even destroy certain other families. They might not have understood it in the kind of complex way that we as adults understand. Like, we got to get rid of these people because they annoy us, because they are in some financial or social way. But they understood that from being acclimated and from absorbing that from their families. So the idea that saying that the girls are essentially like they shouldn't be held responsible for their behavior. They were fully aware of what they were doing. I'm glad. They were fully aware of what they were doing. The weird, like, I'm being possessed stuff. No, it was not. Sorry, that was not accurate in any way. It was not. They knew what was going on. Those girls, they were aware that they were intentionally trying to get someone, and at that time they were aware that they were trying to get someone killed. Okay, from their actions. I don't know because some of them were 16, they might not have understood the depths of what that meant, but they did understand what was happening. I don't think they were complete innocents.
I think Annie Putnam was like 18, so she wasn't. She wasn't.
No, they were adults.
Well, I think Abigail and Betty were 9 and 12, but Abby.
The children, they played along with it, but the adults involved with it, who were the ones who constructed this entire narrative, they were fully aware of what was going on, and they knew very well what they were doing.
This was a time as well, and don't forget, this was a culture as well which was heavily repressive. You're talking like you couldn't have sort of like the smallest modicum of fun, and so the girls.
That's a way to have fun, right? You can lie.
Yeah, you can lie.
You can lie,
and you can have the town. You can essentially they were controlling an entire town. When you're given when you're that young or that naive or that vindictive, and you're given that level of power,
it's not vindictive on the children. They just want attention. Like that's we have to understand. These kids, they don't have. They did not have the capacity to understand the long-term implications. Young children, they don't have that capacity to understand. What they do know is that they want probably attention, because attention is fun. It is a quick, like, very very strong dose. of positive emotional and hormonal feelings that make you feel good when you're getting attention from other people. So of course that feels good. They want to do that. They want that attention. They don't have the capacity to understand the long-term implications of their actions. And that is exactly why you use young children, because they don't have that kind of comprehension capacity.
Yeah.
That's why you use young children.
What do you think, Haryan? Because you've been a bit quiet. I mean,
it sounds to me like that you get what you ask for if you ban Christmas.
Yeah, true.
So, but I mean, I broadly agree with the theory that boredom plays into it. Is it enough to try and kill someone? Depends how bored you are, I guess. I think a lot of the time as well as Aydin's
again,
been...
I don't think it's boredom. I think it's a natural part of human society to want to be better than others. It's social identity theory made manifest. Boredom is kind of a simple way to describe it. It might be the most easy way to describe it. But I don't think, I mean, these people, we have to understand, like, these people were not bored by the way that we understand boredom, because they didn't have a comprehension of things like video games, right? That's not why. They weren't bored. They were engaging in what was at the time typical social interaction. So they coping with the boredom in a way that they felt to be interesting? Maybe, but this was a social identity thing. This was about ostracizing certain people. It was bullying to a degree that, we wouldn't even have any. It wasn't even bullying. It is social identity. Of making sure to identify the out-group versus the in-group. And when you are in a brand new society, which these people were, a brand new society, you have to establish the out-group versus the in-group. And what do? You call some people witches. Wow. That way you establish who is not part of our in-group in our brand new society.
Guys, sorry, I'm going to have to stop you there for a second. The Alabastard, $25 super chat. Thank you so much. Wow, this stream has been an absolutely excellent breakdown. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Wow.
Oh, thank you, dude.
Nice.
Thank you.
Wow, very nice. Yes.
I don't know if you guys can see on the screen as well. Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
I don't know if you guys can see on the screen at the moment, but I've put up Anne Putnam's apology. I don't know if you, Haryan, did you want to read it in your sexy voice?
I can read it in my sexy voice. Jesus, right. I desire to be humbled before God for that sad and humbling providence that befell my father's family in the year of 1692, that I, then being in my childhood, should by such a providence of God be made an instrument for the accusing of several persons of a grievous crime, whereby their lives were taken away from them, whom now I have just grounds and good reason to believe they were innocent persons. Has this society ever heard of a full stop, by the way?
Well, how fascinating, though, that just a few years later they would have to apologize for this, because it was clearly bullshit.
Yeah. Then she goes on. And that is what a great delusion of Satan that deceived me in that sad time, whereby I justly fear that I have been instrumental with others through ignorantly and unwitting to bring upon myself and this land the guilt of innocent blood. So I mean, I like how they, as Aydin was saying before, again, women are more easily swayed by whatever this Satan character is.
But also the thing to be very aware of, and this applies to current politic as well, is that all social identity revolves around two spheres, in-group and out-group. We always view the out-group as negative and bad in some way. It doesn't matter if it's Democrat or Republican or witch or not witch, right? This is how society forms itself. Human society, we're all a bunch of apes. We got to get that in through our freaking heads, which I can't believe. Like, get it through your head. You're all a bunch of animals, okay? I know it's upsetting. But we're all a bunch of animals.
I'm completely on board with that.
On very simple psychological profiles. It gets more complex, but understand that it's based on simple psychological profiles. And when you understand that, you start to understand that, yes, we will ostracize people, and this should be the Salem Witch Trials should be to people even now an exemplar of what happens when you allow intergroup psychology to take you over completely. You will kill and hurt innocent people. That's what happens.
And if you ban Christmas.
Yeah, and if you ban Christmas,
especially banning Christmas, yeah.
Who could ban Christmas, dude?
It's all downhill from there.
It's the best holiday. Like, it's no debate on it. Go on.
I don't know. Halloween's my favorite holiday, but Christmas is pretty good.
you're wrong about that.
I know I'm probably wrong, but as an American, I loved Halloween way more than.
You don't live in America anymore. Fuck that.
I don't. I actually don't. I have no excuse. We don't even celebrate it here.
I already know what episode I'm going to do. I already know what true crime case I'm going to do for Halloween. Just so you guys know. That's well. I'm not, no.
All right, don't spoil it. Don't spoil it then.
No. I just. But anyone watching now, you know that I already know. So yeah, no excuses not to have it out on time. Because I wanted to do a Halloween one last year. Because I think I just started making videos at that time, but I never got around to it. But I just wanted to sort of bring your attention to sort of the bottom 2 points, because we've talked a lot about the hysteria and conspiracy and the spitefulness and essentially the evilness that these girls played in their role. But I wanted to talk about a couple of other theories. So you'll notice that one of them is ergo poisoning, and the other one was it actually witches? Now, while I may not be able to convince you, I would like to be able to state my case on the last one. But before
I gave my statement on what I think happened there from the social psychological perspective, so I think that's covered.
Of course.
So tell me why it's actually the witches.
I'd like to do ergo poisoning first, just because that's quite a quick one, and then before we can move on. So basically, ergo poisoning. So in 1976, Linda Corporeal offered the first evidence that the Salem Witch Trials followed an outbreak of rye ergo. So ergo is a fungus blight that forms hallucinogenic drugs in bread. So essentially it gives you like the effect of LSD. The victims of ergo might suffer paranoia and hallucinations, twitches and spasms.
I think in the US we pronounce the T. I'm not trying to be rude. I think we call it ergot.
Ergot.
But I don't know. I have no idea which one is the correct pronunciation.
It's probably ergot. It's just me and my crappy accent, my southern accent.
I have no idea. You're probably right. I'm probably wrong.
But yeah, so essentially the symptoms that it would bring out in ergo or ergot poisoning would be very similar to those that the girls were experiencing at the time of the Salem Witch Trials. Now, that on its own would be a good theory had it not been for all of the other sort of things that we've already sort of mentioned about earlier. However, it's unlikely that ergot poisoning was a factor or the factor. So although
why would we have found it both in the US at the Salem trials and at the same time in the UK?
That's one
at the same kind of witch trials. Like it's just. It's too coincidental.
Exactly. That's actually one of the first things. Bearing in mind it's been going on for hundreds of years prior to the Salem Witch Trials. In fact, it was already.
It went into the witch trials I talked about earlier. I can't remember the preschool trial.
Yeah. But it was already. But for the most part, it was in especially in Europe. It was on the decline. In Europe anyway, but yeah, it's been going on for 100 years. So are we led to believe that it's all ergot poisoning? Of course not, absolutely not. But not only that as well, but when it came to the theory of ergot poisoning, it's most effective in areas where there's a lack of vitamin A. Now, where Salem, it's a coastal town. What do they do a lot of there? Fishing. What do fish have?
Lots of mercury.
Yeah, but they also
that could be another issue, by the way.
Possibly, but it's also they also have but some fish, a lot of fish will have vitamin A. So they were getting a rich diet through the fish there as well, which would have counteracted some of the hallucinogenic effects if there was anything wrong with the rye. Of course they had rye was a heavy part of their diet as well.
Ergot is a specific type of mold. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a very specific thing. You don't just accidentally get ergot poisoning. No. It doesn't happen on accident. Yeah. So I find this sus. But
Well,
yeah.
not only that, but quickly reading up on ergot poisoning, you also get problems with kind of joints, especially in your feet and hands.
Yeah. So like the contortions and the
yeah.
So I think that's why they pointed towards it, because at the time there was rye was quite a big part of the diet in in Salem at the time, and of course ergot would form the ergot would form on the rye there, so they sort of looked at it. But yeah, I mean, as for me personally, I don't think ergot poisoning was a contributing factor. I think we're talking
as a social scientist. To me, this reads very hardcore as normal social science in action. It's not fun, but it reads as very normative.
Yeah. Now I want to tackle the last point, because since I can only point to a couple of things, and they are kind of anecdotal, but I think maybe they could have argued that they were onto something. So we're going to go back to Giles Corey for a second. So it was said at the time, not only was he saying more weight, more weight, more weight, but apparently with his dying words, he placed a curse on Salem, and in particular on the Sheriff George Corwin. He would die a few years later at the age of 30 from a heart attack. And since then, every sheriff in Salem has either died from a blood or heart-related illness. Many of them have died young.
Oh, wow.
It's believed that it was... local legend says that Giles Corey can also be seen at his gravesite shortly before a tragedy hits. And it's said that if you see him or if you see him or a loved one of yours sees him, then you could very much be in danger. And there was another...
What's that thing that's carved into the wood in the one of the first colonies? I can't remember what it's called.
Oh, is it Rowan Oak?
Yeah, Rowan Oak.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah, and there was another story as well where an accused witch, I can't remember the exact name, I'd have to go and look it up, but long story short, it was just before she was hanged. I think it was her executioner she turned to, and basically said that that she basically was like, what you're doing is wrong, and you're going to be fed the blood. You're going to be fed you're going to be fed blood from God. He would later die from a brain hemorrhage, where he would bleed out of his mouth. Just saying, was it actually witches?
That's fascinating.
Was it actually witches? I mean, come on. I mean, come on. I mean, I know
no,
it's
it wasn't.
unlikely.
Well, I mean, however, I would say, like, again, I want to bring up the Pendle witches.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, of course, it's not. I mean,
it's neat. It's really cool.
Yeah.
The idea that that's real, but this same stuff was happening at around the same time, about 100 years earlier, but comparatively around the same time in England, where women were being rounded up. And if you look into the Pendle witches, it was literally like a land dispute between two people, and one woman who survived got accused of witchcraft, essentially. And look into the Pendle witches stuff, because it's fascinating. It's really messed up, but it's the same kind of stuff where, like, women were being accused of this stuff because they got control of their husband's land, and that made them witches in many ways.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Alabasted. Because confirmed, it was Sarah Good, and the curse was
Sarah Good. Yeah.
God will give you blood to drink. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he died. I think it was like a year or so later. Brain hemorrhage and bleeding out the mouth, and people were like, "Oh my God."
Well, I don't know. I mean, is it serendipity or is it witchcraft? That's the question.
Oh well, there was
I'd call it coincidence, but I'm cynical.
Well, there was a witch pursuit thingy going on at the time.
Oh well.
So, also, I've got a few facts about Salem. Just like a couple of facts that I picked up along the way. So, as you'll know, witches were hanged. No witches. When people sort of tell the stories of this and the glamorizations, they will mention that they will sometimes show witches burning. But no witches were burned during the trials. That's very much a European thing.
No. It's a very interesting. Even in American iconography, we have this like witches burning at Salem, but it's not what happened.
Yeah. Obviously, as we know, the Salem witch trials weren't even the deadliest with regards to trials. But as I say, they are recognised as one of the most famous cases.
Iconographic.
But if you're thinking of
iconographic,
I think if you're thinking about like bloodiest, deadliest, I think you'd need to be looking at things like the Wurzburg trials, for example. Where it was just witch pursuit dinghy on steroids, basically. As I mentioned during the stream, many of the accused pleaded guilty just because it actually resulted in you were more likely to find yourself in jail as opposed to having a noose around your neck. And I mentioned about George Burroughs.
And again, Tituba, who was essentially a slave, probably just had a bunch of laughs watching a bunch of these whiteys who had enslaved her get fucked over. Like, no, I mean, kind of good for her in a way. She got her own level of retribution.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. She was like, "These are the people that enslaved us." Really?
Yeah, right. Exactly. She got her own small amount of retribution. So I'm not gonna say like completely good on her for lying about it, but it was like she got off.
Oh yeah,
she got to totally blame a bunch of white kids for the stuff. And they all got killed. It's messed up, but there it is.
I will let her slide just because of the fact that she wasn't even she wasn't a major player in this story. I mean, she
was also a slave. Yeah. So come on now.
Yeah, but at the same, she did what many other women in this trial did as well. They pled guilty.
They all did.
So are we then led to believe that they should all be held equally responsible? Nah. No, there were bigger players. There was more going on behind the scenes to this. In my view, again, when we look at like you say, the social behaviours going on, there was these people were being manipulated. It was a game to some, and
I think it was mostly a game for the children. I think what's really fucked up about that is that people have this perception that like, oh, kids can't lie. Oh, trust me, children lie the most.
Oh yeah.
Children. This is something that people should understand. Is that children don't develop the capacity to understand empathy until about age 15 on average. You will find this incredible. Now I know that what I just said will like instantly trigger people because they'll be like, my child's 4 and they have extreme empathy. Yes, they do. Until about age 10. Until about age 10, my dude. Around age 10, their empathy drops. There's a huge gap, a drop of empathy that happens in young people between the ages of like 10 to 15, where they have a very hard time understanding other people, and that's in part because of puberty. We don't really know why that happens. We don't really have at least I don't have an explanation as to why that happens, but the data are very consistent in that when people reach around age like 12, 13, they stop feeling empathy towards other human beings. They cannot feel your emotions with you. So when you look at things like this that happened in the past and you wonder why these 14-year-olds were trying to kill women, it's because they literally couldn't feel human empathy. They will in about a year, but they couldn't at that point. It's not their fault. It's a natural state of the human biology. But that just be very careful, not just with the Salem Witch Trials, but whenever you're listening to like 12 to 15-year-olds talking about shit, be very clear that they do not probably have the same empathetic. They are not experiencing empathy in the way that anyone else, including people younger than them, experience empathy. So it's a very unique period of human development wherein they don't experience empathy and they're basically psychopaths, all of them. So I'm not trying to be rude. It's just the truth. Like 11 to 16-year-olds, depending on your age and development, do not experience empathy.
Do we know why that happens?
It's because of hormonal changes.
Yeah. Rory Herbert,
it makes it very difficult for them.
Rory Herbert just says in the chat, at least he didn't put a curse on Wade Winthrop. His relative, John Quincy Adams, became the 6th president of the United States. So Rory is basically saying that he's related to the 6th president of the United States. And Amy says, oh my God, you guys are still going at it. Awesome. Yes, we are. I'm just going to say 48 slides. That presentation.
I'm sorry if I've made it go on too long.
What? No, not you. I'm saying my slides. I was like 48. I'm loving this. Oh yeah, guys. The place where the hangings took place, Gallows Hill. Did you know that the actual location of it wasn't verified until 2016?
No.
So
how do they verify
that? Through like old map records, I believe. But after a while, so after 1692, because obviously after it sort of went a bit Pete Tong, they sort of went hush hush about it, and they didn't really sort of talk about it for many years. Eventually, when they thought, right, we better have a look and see where we can, because it was always it was always sort of like theorized where it might be, and it wasn't until 2016 that it was actually verified that it's in this particular place which is known as Gallows Hill. Also, the final resting places of many of those who were executed is actually unknown, as they weren't afforded Christian burials, because of course you don't give a Christian burial to a witch. Which is interesting because Giles Corey, and this is why I say he didn't die as a witch, he has a gravestone. You can actually go and visit his gravestone. He wasn't convicted because he never stood trial. That's want to know how the Salem Witch Trials ended?
Go on.
Governor's wife was accused.
Yeah, that would be a good way to end it.
Yeah. What's this about witchcraft?
I'm sorry. That just so much.
Shut it down.
This just reminds me of like Seattle with the Antifa problem. It's like, what? Shut it down. Oh, the mayor was attacked. Oh, wow.
Oh no! Now all of a sudden it's an issue. All of a sudden it's an issue.
Yeah.
Oh, how interesting.
Yeah. So the Puritans themselves eventually recognized the errors of their ways. And held a day of prayer on January the 15th, 1697.
Good for them.
This was known as the. It was known as the official day of humiliation, to plead with God for forgiveness. And yeah, as I say, most obviously over the years, many of the witches would later have their convictions overturned. Although the last 5 witches. Or last 5 women accused of being witches wouldn't have their convictions overturned until 2001, so more than 250 years.
Speaking as a witch,
right?
Gives a fuck. I'm not a witch. Actually, I'm mean.
Sorry, I'm not listening to that. All I heard was I'm a witch.
No, I'm not a witch.
So some
say I'm actually a Norse pagan, which is way worse, isn't it?
Oh God, no. So yeah, there was so there's some little Salem facts there for you guys. Yeah,
nice.
Got D on the screen again. Love it. Oh, right. Let me. Oh no. Okay, actually that's fine. Let's have a quick look at the chat. So it was off the edge of a small cliff. Right? Oh, is that you talk about the location?
Oh, yeah.
Let me see if I can pull up a picture of it. This is the most common picture I found.
Oh yeah. Oh, you're talking about.
It's a spot called Proctor's Ledge.
Yep.
Let me see if I can find it. Oh, you want me to? Oh, sorry, I should be able to say that. There we go. Right. I will bring the picture out. I hope. Here it is. Yeah, Proctor's Ledge.
Well, John Proctor tried his best, I would say.
Yeah. There we go.
He certainly tried his best. Didn't work out perfectly, but he tried his best.
He certainly did, yeah. He was going to beat as many people up as he could. but in the end...
Didn't even matter. It'd be cool if he could have beaten more people up. We could have. Unfortunately, it was before the age of video cameras, so we couldn't record him in his fist fights. But intellectually, beat people up.
The best type of fight.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I know that I've upset the chat probably by being a heathen. It's not my intent, but
oh well. The chat will get over it.
I don't care.
Okay.
No, I mean I've been to Catholic school my whole life, and I chose not to be a Catholic. So
It was a choice.
I was the opposite. I went to Catholic school, and I'm still a Catholic.
And you're still a Catholic.
Yeah.
It was funny. Like I always heard people say so many mean things about Catholics to me, and then I went to I had a horrible experience in Catholic school in middle school. But when when I went to a Jesuit university, and now I get in trouble for this. Oh my God, this is so funny. So now, like when I defend Catholicism because I went to a Jesuit institution and I had a great time there, and I had wonderful priests who were my teachers. But people get mad at me for that. And then when I say like, well, I agree with what they said, but I'm still a pagan, they get mad at me for that. So like, there's no way. There's no way to win. There's no way to win. However, I would say I do think that Jesuits they know what's up, and listen to Jesuits because I think they have a good idea what's going on. Not all of them, but some of them do. I really like the Jesuits. I really like the Jesuits. I really do.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, even as a Catholic, I do say quite a lot. Yeah, don't listen to the Pope.
Jesuits don't listen to the Pope, my dude. That's their whole issue. That's why they get in trouble. They don't listen to the Pope.
I almost forgot about one thing actually. Failed to mention it. Do you guys know what the touch test is?
No.
Right. Okay. So, Haryan?
No, I don't.
Right. Okay. So the touch test. So you're in trial. You're accused of being a witch. And I don't know, Abigail Williams starts spurging out on the floor, shaking and violently, rah, 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 rah. At that moment, the touch test involves the accused witch touching the victim. And it's believed that if she is a witch, then the second that she touches the victim, it stops. Can you guess what happened when they did the touch tests during those trials?
No. What happened?
They worked. They stopped. Yeah.
They stopped.
Oh, wow.
Witchcraft is real.
Must be. That's the only logical conclusion.
Yeah.
To that.
And yet, witch cakes didn't work.
No, amazing.
Again, more people become Jesuits, my dude. Just saying, we're the scientists of the Catholic religion, and I'm not even Catholic.
More witch cakes. More witch cakes.
No witch cakes in the Jesuits. No witch cakes.
Witch cake.
Bro, it was great. I had a great time with the Jesuits. They taught me some shit. Like they taught me the scientific method. So I'm not gonna talk too much shit about them.
Yeah.
Cool. Right.
Pope Francis is a Jesuit pope? I didn't know that. He's the first Jesuit pope.
Yeah, St. Francis. He's our big guy. St. Francis. He's our guy.
He's the worst pope I've ever seen. Why would you have a Jesuit who had...
He's probably not a great pope, but the whole idea of Jesuits are autodidacts. They teach themselves. They're all about education. So, like, if you're not into education, don't get into the Jesuit tradition. But other than that, they're really cool.
It's just we've got the most leftist pope in the world, and he's the first Jesuit pope. That's not a good.
Yes, I know. I'm well aware, but you got. Look, I'm not happy about that either. I don't think he's actually a real Jesuit. So I could have some shit to say about him. No, I could say he's not a real
Scotsman.
Yeah, no true Scotsman, not true Jesuit.
Well, there you go. That was something.
But my only I'll end by saying my position on the Jesuits is. The Jesuits were about knowledge and acquisition of knowledge. If you don't ascribe to that, that's fine. I don't also think that aligns with Jesuit ideology and philosophy. But I had this great priest, Father B, who would walk through campus every day, and he would say, he'd click, snap his fingers, and he'd go, "How's it going? How's it going, Saint? How's it going, Saint? How you doing, Saint? You learning something, Saint?" And he was just the best guy ever. And he would like help you with your homework. He was the best guy ever. So I have a very positive, and it wasn't just him. I had all the Jesuit priests who lived on campus with us were fantastic. So I have a very positive relationship with the Jesuits. So that's I know that people like have this weird like idea that Jesuits are involved with a bunch of conspiracy theories. And they think I am because I'm positive towards the Jesuits, but it's just that I went to a Jesuit school and I had a great experience. That's all it is. But how's it going, Saint? By the way, let me ask you guys.
Go on.
That crime guy, Haryan. Yes. How's it going, Saint? You feeling good today, Saint?
I'm all right. I'm all right.
That's what I mean. You got it.
Yeah.
TCG, why do all your live streams revolve around bodily fluids? Oh, right, okay, yeah.
You're good, Saint. Don't worry about it.
No, I'm all right, Saint. Because we love our bodily fluids, Saint.
You're fine here, Saint. It's all fine here, Saint.
if you want bodily fluids, you need to check out the CSI live streams I do with Zenchan.
God.
We haven't done one of those in weeks, actually. I didn't do one yesterday.
I thought you did one last week.
No, I didn't do one last week. Why didn't I? Oh no, it's because I was working on the last video I did, which was the Amy Lynn Bradley case.
Yeah, I need to catch up with your videos.
Yeah, Aydin Paladin, do you like true crime?
Oh my God. I'm a woman. Are you joking?
Oh, well, do you know what?
All women love true crime.
Please tell me why. I don't understand.
Right.
It's really weird.
I don't know why, but all women love true crime. Yeah. They all do. It's just our state. It's how we exist.
I'm going to just let you know my audience, okay, now is 62.5% female.
Wow.
That's okay. I think, do you want to know something sad? I think my audience is 95% male.
Wow, what a bunch of simps.
Just because I talk about statistics. It's not like something women really like.
All I'm saying is that the claim that women like true crime is being validated by Aydin.
Absolutely.
Through statistics.
I get. Hang on. I get this box once 3 times a month or something like that. It's like a I can't remember the name of it. But it's this like true crime box where you get to like solve a crime.
Hunter Killer.
Hunter Killer, yeah, yes. I get that. I have that.
What's that like? Because me and my wife were thinking about getting that.
It's really fun. Get it. It's really fun to do with your partner in particular. Like it's really fun to do with a partner where you get to like figure out some stuff and you get to like debate with one another what's going on. I actually really recommend Hunter Killer. I am in no way endorsed by them. I buy it. I have to pay money for it, chat. Trust me, I'm not. If I was endorsed, I would tell you I was endorsed. I'm trying to get endorsed by them, but I'm not.
Hunter Killer,
check out Hunter Killer. It's really fun.
Hunter Killer, if you want to sponsor a video, just drop me an email. Yeah. Check out my Twitter at that crime guy.
It's really, really fun though. It's like they send you all kind of cool stuff. Like not just like the It's neat to like just try to like figure out the mystery, but they also send you all kind of like cool like neat little objects that you can, if you like pins and stuff, things like that you could use. Hunter Killer is a really, really cool service. I'm not in any way sponsored by them, but it's a really cool service. I hate the fact it's really annoying when I'm talking about a service I actually like and I'm not sponsored by.
Yeah.
It's like, Hunter Killer is a really cool service. If you are interested in
it's like
what's the right way to describe it?
It's kind of like Cluedo for adults, but less.
It's Clue for adults. That's what it is. It's like you have to figure it out, and it takes like multiple boxes to get in the mail to really figure out the crime. And it's really fun. I hate the fact that I'm not sponsored by them, and yet sponsoring it. It's a really neat service though. So if you're interested, and if you like, if you want to figure out murder mysteries, Hunter Killer is absolutely fantastic. I can't over recommend them.
my boyfriend and I have had a fantastic time using Hunter Killer for like 6 months, 7 months, however long we've been using it.
They I think one of the current cases they're doing at the moment is it's like almost like a noir case, isn't it? Like set in the 50s.
It's been multiple noir. The first one was a noir like opera house case. The first one we got, and that was like a couple months ago. It was like 6 months ago. The week that was on for like 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
And I haven't even looked at the new one because we're trying to figure out the first one. So we're still like stuck on the first one, trying to figure out the first one, and then we haven't been able to move into the next one yet. So and I know that it gets figured out online, and that's fun, but like we're trying to do it together. So that's it's how you want. I would love for Hunter Killer to sponsor me, but the reality is that like I would just say check it out if you want to like get basically a murder mystery sent to your house where you get to figure it out. You can do it with your friends. It's really fun. Not sponsored by them for the millionth time. I just have to like super explain that I'm not sponsored by them because I hate when I'm like advertising a product, but I'm not sponsored.
That's what someone sponsored by them would say.
Oh yeah. Excuse me. Would you like to talk about Raid Shadow Legends?
Oh, God.
We can talk about.
Oh my God! What a game!
No, I'm not talking about Raid Shadow. I'm talking about it's something I'm not sponsored by, and saying like, Hunter Killer Killer is a really really good box set that I've been getting for like 6 to 8 months now. I think like 8 months now, and I really really enjoy. And I would say that if you're interested in mystery stuff, that's something you want to do with friends, check out Hunter Killer. Hunter Killer, it's a great box set. I'm not paid. Wowee! I should get money for just saying that. God damn it!
And also, while you're sitting there sifting through the clues, you could be listening to some music through your new Raycons.
I don't even have a Raycon. Like, you know what? I should have a Raycon. Actually, I'm now mad. I'm now mad that I've been buying Hunter Killer for like 8 months and haven't gotten a fucking advertisement from them. Now I'm pissed.
But like how can you not have Raycons? I mean, they're endorsed by public figures such as Mike Tyson, Snoop Dogg, and that crime guy.
I know. I don't have a Raycon.
Not. This isn't paid subscription.
However, not paid advertisement.
Not paid
please,
advertisement.
Not paid advertisement. No, for not paid advertisement for Hunter Killer. Check it out if you like. If you're interested in mysteries, and you want to like do it with a friend. That's what I think is really fun about it. Like, not by yourself is kind of lame, but if you want to do it with a friend or couple group or like a group of friends, it's a really fun thing. Yeah.
Oh, Murgu actually in the chat, sort of going back to the
sorry,
why women? No, it's fine. Why women love life killers, bad boys excite women. Serial killers are the ultimate bad boys. I'm just thinking of what's his name?
What's that guy?
Ted Bundy.
He's got a ton of women who are like all on his dick.
Ted Bundy had like a
Ted Bundy. All of them do. All of them do, which is very bizarre. I think like what it's that women love bad boys kind of.
Maybe it's
trope,
the idea of maybe being able to change them, perhaps.
Oh, that's it, dude. That is a huge part of it. Is that I can change him, I can save him, I can do it. He gets into my life, I'll fix him. No, girl, you can't. Girl, you can't. He's psychotic. You can't change anything. But that's the thought process, I think. Weird. Just go play that psychopathic Hunter Killer game I expressed, but don't go try to marry Ted Bundy. How about that?
The hands down best advertiser on YouTube, Internet Historian. Changed my mind.
Oh my God, his ads are hilarious.
I
would rather watch his ads than watch his actual videos. Like his ads are so good. I wish I was that good. I can't. There's no way.
People have made like taking the ads out of his videos and made them into compilations. My favorite one, hands down, is the Raycon one where he's in the office and he's got the wired headphones and he like goes to stand up and the TV just the PC screen just smashes into his face and then like he gets caught in the lift.
He's a fucking genius. Like, he's so smart. Well, he's not just smart. He's fucking hilarious.
In fact,
Aussies have a certain ability to be so funny that it should be illegal for them to be so hilarious.
Yeah,
I don't know why it is that Australians are so funny.
They always are, though. Not all of them, but Aussies are consistently hilarious.
Oh, what have I done there? Undo that. Just want to show you a little.
As someone who's lived across the Anglosphere now, and like I used to think British people were like, well, no, hang on, not compared to Aussies. Aussies are so fucking funny. No offense.
I resent that.
Oh, let me ask you guys a question. Here, this is a totally unrelated question. I was on the cooking board of 4chan recently.
Oh God.
And
right.
I'm on there all the time. So if people don't know, you won't know who I am, but I'm on there. Don't worry. Because I'm really interested in cooking. It's a big thing that I like. And someone posted a 78-page document. Okay. And I read the whole thing because I'm autistic. Okay.
If we're talking about cooking again, I'll bring Dave back.
Sorry, really quick aside about cooking.
Yeah.
But it wasn't about cooking. It was about British pub etiquette.
Right.
Now, I've lived here in the UK for 2 years, and I've never found anything that was within the UK that was fundamentally different from being in the US. But this person had this whole book about how you interact at a pub in the UK. And one thing I never experienced, I asked my fiance about this, and he said, yes, this is the thing you're supposed to do, but I had never experienced it, which is that when you buy a drink, you're supposed to say, and you too, or to you too, and get it, because you're not tipping the bartender, but telling him to buy himself a drink.
Yep.
I have never experienced that. Now I feel like it's more like fucking asshole.
Yeah, no, it's more like if I'd be like, I'll have a pint of beer and get one. And for yourself.
You too.
And
you have one yourself.
Yeah, get one for yourself.
I had no idea that was a thing. Now I feel like a dick for the last 2 years.
Well, I mean, I don't know how common it is.
It's not a massive thing. Like, I mean, when I was younger, I used to do it if the barmaid I thought was fit, but I mean,
okay, so you're hitting on a barmaid, but like, I didn't know that when I walk into a random ass fucking bar, I'm supposed to tell the guy to buy himself a drink. I had no idea that was the thing I was supposed to do. Now I feel like a ding dong.
Well, most of them just have tip jars now, really.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Well, I'm more than willing to give them a tip, but although our money here is weird, but like, I didn't know I was supposed to give them a tip, but
our money here is proper.
Whatever.
I'm just saying.
What's wrong with our money?
No, it's not your money. It's the Channel Islands money. Is weird.
Right. Okay. I'm with you. You can't use the Channel Islands money over in mainland, by the way.
Hell no, we can't. Although they'd probably be impressed.
They don't. Well, the thing is, you'd be surprised because I used to where I used to work before. I used to see a lot of people trying to like Jersey or Guernsey coins.
What's wrong with Jersey coins?
Well, it's not legal tender. It's not classified as legal tender. It's a slightly different.
Well, of
currency.
course, because we shouldn't be a fucking part of the UK. Fuck you.
No.
Well, you're a crown dependency, so
yeah, we are a crown dependency.
No,
yeah.
You got your own government.
Yeah.
You just rely on us when we need.
You just need us for the army.
Yeah, only to get rid of the Nazis, right? Only to get them out.
Well, or the French.
Or the French, or the Nazis, or whoever starts to invade the fucking Channel Islands. But I had no idea that was a thing. I was like, oh no, I'm supposed to give money on Jersey? I didn't know.
It's a tax haven. What's this? I've got to still pay for this.
Jersey is not a tax haven.
Wow. Maybe not now. When I was younger, I used to go there.
Yeah, we can have a talk off screen about what isn't a tax haven.
Do they still leave their cars and doors unlocked? Car doors unlocked?
Oh, no one locks anything here.
It's mad, isn't it? Because I've been to Jersey before. It's
beautiful.
Love it. I'd love to go back. I've visited the German Underground Hospital there as well. All roads lead to St. Helena.
That's on Guernsey, not on Jersey.
Yeah, sorry, Guernsey, yeah. But I've been there. All I really remember is really needing to go to the toilet. Like, I was about 10, 11 at the time. I was absolutely busting. My mum was like, we're doing this tour.
The Germans occupied both Jersey and Guernsey, but like, yeah.
just remember really needing to go to the like since we got there. It feels like
you're just probably pissed on some German fucking flag, and no one would have cared.
Well, people leave their doors unlocked, just going, some.
No one gives a fuck here.
Yeah,
dude, no one
They
gives a
really
fuck.
don't.
Although this is where from Henry Cavill's from here.
Okay.
That's what we're known for.
Not Graham Lasseter. Oh no, Graham Lasseter was Guernsey. See
Jersey.
Again, I'm thinking football.
Don't worry about it. It's Jersey, not Guernsey.
Yeah.
There's like 4 Channel Islands.
Yeah, so you got Guernsey, Jersey, Sark. I thought it was only 3.
Alderney.
Oh, Alderney, yeah.
Oh, anyway. Sorry about talking about my weird shit.
No, I love the Channel Islands.
All right.
I would love.
They're very fun.
Yeah,
I'll talk to you about them in 5 minutes when we go off air.
Cool. All right, guys. I think that about does it. Would you say?
Well, I've not talked about Salem for about 20 minutes.
No.
Yeah.
So, guys, yeah, if for the audience, if you haven't already realised, that was it for the Salem stream. I hope you managed to get a little bit something out of there. Definitely do some research. As I say, there's a lot more. There's a lot more to the story than what's been covered here. As you saw, there was like 20 odd victims, and we only sort of really talked about maybe 2 or 3 of them in great detail. Some definitely interesting cases out there, or stories off the back of them. But again, I just want to take the opportunity to obviously thank you for the super chats, Proper Horror Show and Alabaster. Amazing, thank you so much. I really appreciate that, and thank you all. Thanks to all of you for watching. I had a really good time covering that, actually.
It's fun.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Very interesting.
And and of course, thank you very much, Haryan, as always.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. And thank you to our special guest, Aydin Paladin.
Anytime, my man.
Fantastic. And I suppose I'll be the one to announce so next week we're back on Proper Horror Show, Proper Horror Show's channel. There is a playlist for the double feature horror show in my channel playlist section, so go and check that out. Go and subscribe to her. Get her to 1,000 subscribers. She absolutely deserves it. Oh gosh, Aydin, she is, put it this way, she's like the female equivalent of Mauler.
I gotta check it out then. Holy shit!
Absolutely,
I gotta see that long girl.
We
see that.
We need long man to meet long lady. Let's make it happen. She
long lady.
Well, there's already some weird shipping going on there, but yeah, we gotta get we got myself. And please remove me from this equation. So we're both Welsh. It's uncomfortable.
But yeah, we need to get long man to meet long lady. We need to get long man to talk horror with long lady. We need you to talk horror with long lady.
I'd love to. I would love to, because I love horror. Is like my main thing, dude.
Yes,
I need the long man to talk Soma with me as well.
Hell yeah, dude.
So we should definitely get something like that set up. But I suppose I'll be the one to. I hope she doesn't mind me introducing. I think, to be fair, I think she mentioned it. She mentioned it a few weeks ago. But homework for next week: The Descent. But set the tone. Turn off your phone. Switch off the lights. Put the TV on. And watch it properly. No interruptions. Feel the atmosphere. And then when you come in Tuesday, we'll talk about it.
Go get spooked.
That sounds really scary.
Stop being a pussy. Go get spooked.
Make me.
Don't be such
all right, I will.
Oh my god.
I'll force you to, my dude.
Oh my god.
You have no choice now.
Oh, I'm gonna get beat up by Aydin. Jeez.
Harry, is there anything you want to shill before we go?
I guess. Well, I had Laughing at the Guardian last Saturday. But I did it after I got hit on the head by a plank of wood, so it wasn't as long as usual. But it's still there to be watched and fun. I haven't made a video this week yet because I have still been building that garden house, but I will hopefully make one tomorrow. Don't know what it's on yet because I've not kept up with the news either. But I will make something. But yeah, that's all for now.
Fantastic stuff. And Aydin Paladin, you've subscribed. And also, I should also shout out to CWI Boy, Fake is Real, Jacob Bordenkirker, Anne Carter, and of course Aydin Paladin for subscribing as well tonight. And Aydin, speaking of which, is there anything that you want to shill?
Just my gay channel. Like, I mean, I have a video coming out. Maybe like I've been working on it for literally a month at this point. So when it comes out, it comes out. It's about villains. If you're interested,
yes.
Okay. If you're not, whatever. YouTube will probably shit on it. So I don't know. Like, it's very hard to like also have to try to edit content to not be copyrighted.
Definitely.
And from like 50 different movies, because that's what's happening, is like 50 different movies at a minimum, I would say, in this video. It does everything from Harry Potter to Leon the Professional, so and American Psycho. So get an idea of what's going on in this video. It's a comprehensive idea of why people like villains. I've been chilling it for like the last week, or 2 weeks, which I really hate to do, but it's taken me a really long time to work through editing this video. It's frustrating to edit, and it's happening, but maybe in like the next 3 days, I would say.
Fantastic stuff. Oh, links are in the description, by the way. So you've got Haryan's channel, you've got Aydin Paladin's channel, you've also got my colleague, my colleague and my partner in true crime gaming, Zen Chan, as well. He's got a Twitch account, so yeah, go check them all out. They do really good work, and I have to say the your video on conformity after the Chauvin trial, I watched that. That was
I'm glad you liked it.
It was really good, really good.
It was a very upsetting video to make. That one was by the way, I wrote that video a month before, actually almost 2 months before the what would you call it? The the word, my brain's not working.
Verdict.
Before they came to their verdict.
Yeah.
So I knew it was happening.
Yeah, it was extremely interesting, I have to say, from like you say, from a social study point of view.
I think it's still an interesting video for people who after the fact, because the video was made to be like, I wrote it before the verdict happened because I knew it would happen, because as a social scientist, you know, at some point, you know, all shit's gonna work out.
Yeah.
I think it's a very good. I have to say, even for myself, it was a good video to explain some social science stuff. But enjoy that, I suppose.
Yeah. Louisiana Swamp as well. I'm late. Don't worry. We're literally wrapping up now. And oh wow, you've donated $3 as well through
Kaiser Soze. I don't know.
Oh sweet. Thank you for that. Video will be up. You can always watch the replay. But Admiral, but we're still going, but we are about to wrap up now. So once again, thank you so much for the super chats. Thank you for the comments. Thank you to Haryan and Aydin for supporting me through this 48 slide presentation.
It was amazing, dude. Great work.
Thank you. And I hope to see each and every single one of you next week on Proper Horror Show's channel. All right. Until next time, take care.
Bye-bye.
And goodbye.
#RockGang.
For now.